All right. What's up, everybody? How you doing out there? Welcome back to the show. This is last week's fights. My name is Thinker St. James, and tonight we are going to be talking about UFC Fight Night, Covington versus Buckley, getting a little bit into this new GFL league that has just been announced. And to talk about all of that with me, as always, my co-host, my good friend, the Ohio player, and a man who would not lose a fight if he was flanked by Hulk Hogan and Chael Sonnen. Mr. Chase Parton, how you doing, brother?
Dude, we are here, and it's a really good card to end out the year, so I can't be anything more than happy to come talk about it, really.
Yeah, absolutely. So, disclaimer, of course, beforehand, you might have seen this on social media if you follow, but I was at this event live. So, I'll talk a little bit about what the live experience was like. Don't want to take over the entire podcast with that, but just where it is appropriate, I'll make a few notes and mentions and whatnot. So, how did you think that it looked from the broadcast, my guy?
There was some weird technical weird technical difficulties going on, and that was happening throughout the card. I don't know what was going on. Lights were flickering. The broadcast was the audio was like going out and like going robot. And I think at one point it went to commercial when they were still fighting. It was a weird thing.
Yeah, I didn't see all that much of that kind of stuff when I did the rewatch, but I was jumping around and I was kind of I was really using the rewatch more to talk about the live experience and then take the notes for today. So there might have been a couple of things that I missed as far as that kind of stuff goes. But the one thing that I definitely caught was when the power went out, which was oddly prophetic. Shout out to the homie Andy, who is constantly a companion in the chat and one of the funniest people on the planet. We were talking about it in the Discord, saying that apparently the power had gone out during the press tour part of everything, or during some part of the press. Meg O'Leary was given an interview and the power went out then. So we were like, how crazy would it be if the power ends up going out in the building on the night of, and then it does. So weird, little bit of forethought there, but it actually did end up happening. Other than that, there were a couple of things that I noticed in the building that I did not see translate on the broadcast. We'll get into those when they come up. But if you are new, we are going to be going over every single fight from this card. If there's anything that you want to talk about that's not pertaining to the fight that we are talking about at the moment, you can throw it into the chat and we will come back to it at a later point in the stream. Shout outs to the homie Toby, who I heard was hanging out over on Chase Parton's stream during the watch along. Very cool.
And, yeah, he's a good man. He's a good man, I'll tell you that.
Good man indeed. So let's get this thing started. We'll start it right off with the first fight of the evening. I guess I should preface it by saying this UFC Fight Night Covington versus Buckley took place in Tampa, Florida at the Amalie Arena. Nice place to see a show in general, I have to say. Always enjoy being in Tampa. Tampa crowds, there, you're going to get your mix of different types of people with that many people in one place regardless, but overall a good crowd with decent people, and the arena itself is very accommodating. That's where the Tampa Bay Lightning play generally, if you're a hockey fan. So I've been there a number of times. Always enjoy being at the Amalie Arena. And the first fight of the evening, starting us off, was Piera Rodriguez versus Josephine Knutson. What did you think of this fight, sir?
Well, I definitely knew that Piera was going to come in here and do her thing wrestling. You know, the last fight that she had, you know, she got disqualified for headbutting, whatever you want to say. But she was still on top wrestling. So I took this into account, said she was probably going to wrestle with Knutson because Knutson, excuse me. And we haven't really seen her too much grappling because she's really just obliterated people on the feet in the stand up. But Piera did a good job getting her to the ground, holding her on the ground. And Josephine did a decent job of trying to get like, you know, dig deep kind of deal, but it wasn't enough.
True. Yeah. I mean, this is that's really the basic assessment of everything is that Knutson showed the same issues on the ground that she had shown before. It's her striking is really her bread and butter, and I was hoping by this point, as she's had I think two other fights in the organization, either one or two, but she's had more than her fair time to gain some more skills. I was hoping that the ground game would have caught up a little bit more at this point, but striking is still sharp, ground game a little bit lacking, and Rodriguez took full advantage of that. She had some really nice takedowns and some good elbows. She showed some really nice fundamentals, which is what you needed to do in that kind of a situation when you knew what you were going to be up against. So I think Rodriguez really just did a lot right in this fight. And one other thing that I thought was important to note with it is that she had really good energy from the beginning of this fight. She came out with a lot of determination from the jump. She really had that go get it attitude, which I appreciated. I think that might have caught Knutson off guard just a little bit.
Yeah, Knutson, she was definitely like in the first round, she looked a lot more confused on the game plan going forward. And then Piera, honestly, I don't know if I started to drift away because this got to a point where she was just going to do the same thing for the rest of the fight. But I don't remember I don't remember her gassing. Geez, I'm mush mouth tonight. I don't remember her gassing out at any point. So that's good on Piera. She was able to wrestle for 15 minutes and hold her down for 10 of them. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was, I think, a little bit foolish of me to have kind of had I don't know. I think my perception of her was a little bit skewed by the disqualification. I was like, well, if she fought like a bit of a moron there, I mean, that's kind of a one-on-one thing, fight IQ kind of stuff where you don't do that. And she did something that was very basic as a mistake that cost her the fight. I was like, surely there's going to be more weirdness with her, or like not even that, just more like that it just that everything wasn't there. All the pieces were not there for her yet. And I guess that was in hindsight a very wrong way to be thinking about this fight. So I think that the like you said, the cardio was fine. The ability to keep control was definitely there. Although there was that one time that I actually thought Knutson had a really nice move when Rodriguez got the was full mount and going for the ground and pound, where she got that leg pry where she had both legs up, got him back, flipped Rodriguez off of her. I thought that was pretty impressive, honestly.
I think that is the moment where I heard in commentary, and this is Brendan Fitzgerald that said it, and I love him, but I was very confused on what he said because he was like, "That's why you don't stay in top mount for too long," and I was like, "What are you? Well, that's dominance right there. You stay in top mount. I don't like maybe if you're standing up or hunched up, but if you just stay in top mount, that's like." What are you talking about? I don't know. But.
Yeah, I guess if you have if you're smaller, if there's less body weight, there's more potential for the person on the ground to be able to buck and get their way. But yeah, I kind of did think that was a little bit strange as well, because generally if you're at the point where you're able to secure that and you can get the ground and pound going, then usually that could be fight ending. So it's a little bit odd, but yeah, maybe Fitzgerald knows something that we don't.
I say a lot of bad stuff, and Badger kind of agreed with him. So maybe if that says anything, he does train a little bit. So maybe he's not Jesus either. Nobody. So It's whatever.
Well, and also, I mean, I guess this is a good example of what could happen, right? If they're able to get the legs up and pry, then, you know.
And I even said after it, like, oh well, okay, I guess he was, I guess he did make a statement after it happened, like, kind of deal. That's why you don't do. It's like, well, it did happen, so what?
Right, sure. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, overall, just a really dominant performance for Rodriguez. Great intensity throughout the entire fight. She started with it, kept it going all the way through. And I think also she capitalized on a lot of openings, both when it came to the takedowns and the strikes. Like she was able to find the elbow where, it was appropriate. She was able to get the takedowns when she could. And Knutson didn't make that as difficult as she probably should have at times. So overall, Piero Rodriguez gets the win, and I'm really not too mad at it. I just a little disappointed that Knutson did not pull it off.
As I think about it, and I didn't think about this until later in the card, but I will bring it up. This is probably one of the first, you could say, fraud checks, questionably. Knutson is kind of like, she's on a good win streak, or was. All unanimous decision. I know she's not finishing, and she ain't like, but she is winning. And that's a good little win streak.
Mm-hmm.
And she kind of got humbled a little bit, 30-27. And
Across
I would
the
say
board,
I would say that's one of the fraud checks on this card.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that
Okay,
you can look
never
at it
mind.
that way.
I don't want to interrupt you. Toby is completely right. There's no fraud checks in WMMA.
All right,
Sorry.
fair.
Now go ahead. Sorry. I wanted to make sure he got his glory for that one. He's totally
Well,
true.
and I mean, while we're taking a little bit of asides here, I have to address this as well. Earlier on in the stream, Toby asking, is Mego Levy mid IRL or just on TV? First of all, brother, you're about to get your ass kicked out of this this podcast, this stream altogether. She is as gorgeous in real life as she is on camera. Mego Levy. I was mere feet away from her, and it was. I was feeling it. I was feeling it in my chest, man, because she is just lovely. But
Okay.
all right, back.
I apologize.
I mean, that's really that was really the end of the analysis anyway. Though is that I mean, if you can look at it as a little bit of a fraud check, perhaps. I don't know if Knutson really was like having that much steam coming into this one to warrant that level of assessment. But either way, I mean, she was undefeated before this fight, so. It's an unfortunate taking of the O. And yeah, I didn't expect it necessarily from Rodriguez specifically, but this should be a wake up call to her that she really does need to just work on the ground game. There's holes in the game that need shoring up, and that's where you need to put your emphasis now going forward, because it is certainly going to get worse than what Piero Rodriguez was doing.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I mean, no, it won't if she can't get better than Piero Rodriguez,
Well, yeah, it's a good point. Right, exactly. Going forward, if you get back on the feet, get a couple more wins the way that you normally do, and then run into another high level grappler, you're going to run into those problems. So, one thing from the building on the night is that there was somebody in the crowd who was fucking in love with Josephine Knutson, because the Josephine Marry Me was being shouted very, very loudly over and over again. There were a couple of people in the crowd who had some fun things to say, and that was certainly one of them early on. Josephine. That was
he just had an English accent, like it was just like a normal American guy.
No, it was just an American dude who was was all in. He was really feeling it. So, Josephine, if if you're single, there's somebody in Tampa who's looking for you.
There we go.
All right. So yeah, I mean, a decent fight to start the evening off. It was a little bit of a slow roll in, I would say, but this fight kind of picked up the pace a little bit here. This is Davy Grant versus Ramon Taveras. Taveras, of course, a Florida native. He is from Duval County, and if you are interested and haven't seen it, I did an entire video about what they actually mentioned on the commentary on the broadcast. A survivor of a drive-by shooting that very nearly took his life not too long ago. So go back to the channel, youtube.com/@YamaShow, if you want to check out my coverage of that incident. But in this fight with Davy Grant, not looking as sharp as I was hoping he would. What'd you think, Chase?
Yeah. Well, first off, I want to point out that the Discord completely had no faith in Davy Grant. The Englishman They don't even claim this dude. They said Davy Grant is not gonna win this fight. Every time that you think he's gonna, he won't. And then he comes out here and puts on a clinic. Like, whoa, does he put on a good show? This is one of the first old men to put on a nasty performance. So a couple of them did it, and Roman Tavares, he's really just a boxer. Like, I don't know why he doesn't do many more leg kicks. Like, look, he landed one and threw one, and then he's kind of like Chris Curtis of the bantamweight. Like, he's just only, yeah, Chris Curtis, not, oh, okay, made sure I got it right. And he's just like boxing only, has a lot of other skills, but just doesn't use them because he thinks he can just outbox people. But Davy Grant was mixing it up too much, and he just had too much for him. Reasonably so, this was a coin flip. Now that I see that in hindsight, but I thought this was good money to win on Roman Tavares.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the real story of this one is just that when Davy Grant was letting the boxing go, he was having super success, and Tavares was not. I mean, the volume was not there for Ramon, and it was definitely there for Grant, especially later in the fight, because Tavares picked a couple of decent shots. I mean, was like, he was having minor success with that, but that was also like the problem. It was singles as opposed to a good amount of volume, which when Davy Grant, especially in that third round, man, he came to life in that third round, bro. I mean, like, it was because I mean, they were saying, he was saying himself in the post fight that like the game plan was to to kick a lot, try to keep him a little bit more at bay, uh, pick shots a little bit more cautiously, and that's kind of what he had alluded to. Is like, well, I halfway through the fight, I was like, I wanted to go for the finish, So it's like when he started to do that, he certainly had a great amount of success. And I would say in this fight, sometimes abandoning the plan is the plan because that boxing was super clean.
Yeah, he looked really, really good. I don't I'm trying to think of the way to describe it, but he was mixing in so many kicks, doing a lot of not I'm trying to not the same thing, but he was doing a lot of good combinations very frequently. What he knew worked, he was going back to it, and it looked nice. I'll tell you that. It was a good performance to watch. One of the first performances that was just like fun to watch. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was like the what you were saying about the English not claiming him, and there not being a lot of backing for Grant coming into this fight. I think is pretty much how a lot of people were thinking about it. Certainly myself, just based on some of what we had seen before. He always did seem like a dude who just was kind of there. He was one of those kind of middler guys that you'd see on the card, and he'd either get the win or not get the win, but it was just not something that it did not inspire a great amount of confidence. And then, of course, Tavares had those really high volume and high activity fights recently with his name is escaping me, but the dude from Canada, Canada by way of Ukraine or
Sirius
whatever.
City.
City, yes, thank you. Exactly. Thank you very much. Yeah, so I mean, he had those fights which were pretty well a lot of intensity in those fights. So you kind of expected Tavares to come out with a level of intensity that might have been able to overwhelm Grant. Tavares just really didn't. It was like he was too in the cut. I mean, on the broadcast as well, I think it was Dean Thomas saying that he thought that Tavares might have thought he was ahead in the fight and then was like kind of resting a little bit and sort of taking it easy. I don't know if that's what it was or not, but either way, it's like, bro, if you're going to land one, you got to land 2, 3, and 4, especially if Davy Grant is able to do that. Hard to tell earlier on in the fight because it took a while for Grant to start to do that. But when he did, man, it was 3, 4s, and 5s at that point, and those combos really were super clean. Very nice boxing.
Yeah, I mean, at a certain point, again, it's like I didn't feel that Davy Grant was going to finish. Unfortunately, I just figured he was just going to style on the rest of the fight. So I will say that this is another first pick that Toby got right of the night. So good for him. And I'm not capping. I swear the Discord was all against Davy Grant. Toby was the only one, but he's a true Englishman. Those frauds over there, listen, you're not them, brother.
Fair. There you go. Well, and shout out to him for for sticking true to the roots, I guess. Then,
There
but
we go.
and as a Floridian, it was slightly unfortunate to see Tavares lose in the hometown. Also, because I mean, part of the whole situation that I had mentioned of him with this drive by, he's trying to get his family out of Duval County. Duval can be a very dangerous place in a lot of areas. So he's trying to move his family out of there. It would have been nice to see him get this win so that he could start getting that going a little bit more. But sometimes that's just the way of it. So
Yeah,
it is what it
100%.
is. All right, moving on. Uh, this is Miranda Maverick versus Jamie Lynn Horth. Why don't you start us off, Chase? Let me take care of this
Yeah,
chat.
Miranda Maverick, good looking girl, pretty woman. What can you say? She does good things. And this one, I thought she did a lot better than she gave herself credit for. She came in to the post fight speech saying that this was not a good performance for her. Like she, should have done better, wanted to do better, blah, 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 blah. But I want to make a point that Jamie Lynn Horth, somebody said Jar Jar Binks. I'm not going to say that was funny,
No.
but dude, she's huge. Oh my gosh. But it is Miranda Maverick being so small. Like when I actually saw she's 5'3", I'm like, holy shit. Like,
Yeah.
or maybe 5'4", maybe 5'4" is what it was, but that's still pretty little. I don't care what weight class that is. Like that's really small.
The difference was very noticeable in person for sure.
Yeah, and Jamie Lynn, I mean, gosh, she is pretty decent. Like she is not a bad fighter. Like to be a minus or a plus 600, excuse me. Miranda Maverick had a game plan that she knew. I mean, she's just good at wrestling, and that's a really good skill to have as early on, especially. And then her striking, I want to say I don't really remember her standing too much in this one. Not that she wasn't, just remember the actual vision of it, but I don't remember her being bad. Like I think she's a pretty decent, well-rounded, fighter.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that that's really the bigger takeaway here. I mean, like you were saying, I mean, Maverick as I think on my book was a minus 1100. So, ridiculous betflation going on there in general. I think that the takeaway is that Horth really had people biting their nails a little bit with this one. If you had
Yeah,
that sure lock on Maverick, it was a kind of a slower fight. I would say that this was one of the more lulls of the earlier part, of the prelims here. Slow first round, of course. Really, the the biggest moment from that first round was Horth getting all up in Maverick's undercarriage. I don't know if that came through
yeah,
on the
yeah.
broadcast, but I was like, yeah, Jamie Lynn Horth is a newlywed. I said, Horth, your new wife is not going to appreciate you checking all of the available leak locations from Maverick. But it was, the second round a little bit better for Horth. Very clinch heavy. This whole fight kind of was that. A lot of clinching with no payoff was, I think, the bigger issue with Horth is that she used her weight pretty effectively, but it didn't go anywhere. So it started to add up to the optics of it being, not great when it came to what the judges were going to be seeing. Because I mean, I was a little bit surprised that it was a unanimous decision. I thought that there might have been possibly potential for somebody to go the other way just based on the amount of control that Horth was able to keep when it came to the clinching. I'm not mad at it at all. I mean, 2-1 Maverick is perfectly correct. But it was just like again in the moment when I was there watching, I was like, I mean, she is holding her down a whole hell of a lot, kind of thing. But that really does speak to the fact that there was not that much going on either way in this fight. And if Maverick, the whole point of this fight, from what I could gather, was that this really was the fight that was like, give Maverick an opponent, especially also Horth is coming on really short turnaround as well. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
go out there and get like a really solid win to shoot her up into the rankings. And get her into the conversation, because Maverick's been around for a minute. It's not like she's a new fighter who's just like starting to make a name. I mean, like she's had. I mean, I'm not talking about like decades or anything like that. But it's not like she's debut or anything like that. I mean, she's fought a couple of times.
Fun fact:
Yes.
she debuted on UFC 254.
So okay, so I mean, I think that does back up the claim. You know, I mean, she's not new to the organization, so it's like she's been kind of hovering below the rankings for a while. This is supposed to be the fight that's going to bounce her up and really make her part of the conversation. And I just did not think that this made her look like the elite level fighter she is trying to present as.
Yeah, and that's probably a good thing, but you can definitely tell that she's at the best point in her career still. So there's still more to come in my opinion. Like you can see she worked, that the body that she's got is a product of the work that she put in.
For
She
sure.
looks phenomenal. And her wrestling, her gas tank, and even like I even talked about her post fight speech, it's just the determination to be great. Like that's gonna be her best attribute.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I definitely do think that there are bigger things to come for her. It's just a matter of being able to differentiate yourself because this we'll certainly talk about in the main event. You know, there are those people who get close that they're like you get into the rankings and then there's like two levels or three levels in the rankings to me really. It's like you have the below the top five, you've got those top five. And even within the top five, it's like there's only a select few that are able to differentiate themselves to be that cream of the crop, really top level championship material. And it's like, there's people that are close to it that never really achieve it. I would hope that, for Maverick's sake, if she really wants to be a champ, that she's able to, separate herself in that way.
Yeah, 100%.
And as far as Horth goes too, I think that this was a better showing than a lot of people were giving her credit for it potentially being. So she really doesn't have too much to be ashamed of here. Work on some of the fundamentals as well, and then go get your own game going. Because I thought that like all of what those attributes you were talking about, the size definitely there, the ability to control is certainly there as well. She just needs to move that into something more effective for her and especially when she's going to be with fighters who are going to be tying her up as well, trying to get her wrestled down and get her on the ground. So there's some stuff that needs to get worked out for her, but it's stuff that I think that she can work on.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think that
I'm
there's
actually kind of a big fan of Jamie Lynn Horth now. Like after, I don't know, just a super tall flyweight like woman. Like I don't know, she's kind of it's something about it. I kind of like it.
Yeah, that's my point. I think that she has like some of the raw elements that could make her dangerous in the division for sure. She just needs to refine it a little bit.
Yeah, I get you.
So yeah. All right. So, I mean, this was the point in the evening where we were like hoping that we were going to be getting finishes. And this fight did not necessarily help that, but was still an entertaining fight. Nonetheless, this is Felipe Lima versus Miles Johns. A lot of frenetic energy in this fight, which you could definitely feel in the building. Both these guys swinging pretty heavy. How do you think it looked?
I think this was a good one just because one, this was up a weight because Miles Johns is normally bantamweight. Yes.
Is that the case? I think
I
it
believe
might
so.
be.
Because he was supposed to fight Cody.
Oh, yes. Yes. That is true. Okay. Yeah.
So okay, I didn't really put that together until just now looking at it. But
Mhm.
so Miles Johns, when this fight started, I mean, before it started, I said, he goes to decision all the time. He's not getting finished. Like this is a step up in theory. This is not a step up because Miles Johns has been here for a little bit. But once you see the skill that Felipe Lima has, this is a step up in competition that Miles Johns has never seen. And Felipe, holy God, this kid he's on to something, man. He's electrifying is what it is. Like he's just able to draw in an audience with his ability. Like he makes it fun to watch and it's effective at the same time. Like he puts a beating on somebody. He didn't finish, but you could tell that he was going for it. Like he wanted to get the finish and he was trying. So that's all you can really ask for.
Yeah. So all right, I agree with these points that you're making. I think that I will offer a slight counter argument only for Lima's sake more than anything else, because I do think that he has those elements that you just outlined. I think that when he's fighting a guy like Miles Johns, who's also giving back a lot of the speed, because I think that Lima, one of his big attributes is how fast he is. I mean, he's moving all over the place, but so was Miles Johns. He got a little too flashy at times. I don't want to see him become one of these guys that gets overly flashy and then gets caught because of it. That was one thing. And then the other thing is that when he had a couple of really solid submission attempts that were, like, to me, looked like they were a lot closer than they ended up being because he wasn't able to secure them. Like, one that really stuck out was in the second round. He had the anaconda choke. It looked like it was pretty goddamn locked in. I mean, I he just abandoned it. He literally just let it go. And then there was the third round had the rear naked choke where it was pretty much the same thing. It's like he tried for one side, I guess, thought he didn't have it, and then switched to the other side. And by that point, Johns was able to scramble out. It's like, bro, if you can't be repositioning your chokes like that quickly if you don't immediately have it. I would like try to get it a little bit more, at least wear him down a little bit more, because you're leaving too many openings for escapes, which is exactly what Miles Johns did. So those, I just wanted to put those out there as a little bit of a counterbalance to everything, because I do think that Lima has a lot of potential, and he showed a lot of greatness in this fight.
Yeah, I think he's another on a list of up and coming fighters that I'll keep an eye out for, because he just looks like he has a full bag right now. Like kind of like now it's a reach of a comparison, but Mauricio Hufi, like he does a lot of electrifying things, but we're starting to see that it's not to the ceiling yet, but it's on its way there. And I think there's still great things to come. Felipe Lima not being able to finish Miles Johns, it's not a bad thing. If he would have, we would have thought it was a great thing. It was just it was a good thing that he won the fight. So that's the last thing.
Sure. Yeah, and I mean, with Miles John's side of the equation, Bisping had said on commentary that he thought that Johns was waiting for the one shot, which I thought was a little bit of an odd criticism at the time, because he said that early in the fight, and I thought that Johns was sticking and moving pretty well. It turned out to be a little bit more of an accurate statement a little bit later on, because Johns, like, he had an odd energy coming into this fight in general, which you actually could tell from his walkout too. Like, I was actually like
You
right
felt the
on.
energy.
Yeah, because I was right there for the walkout. I guess that's a note in general, is that where I was sitting in the building, I was really I was right where the fighters entered from. So a couple of times, especially earlier on in the card during the prelims, I was able to get like a pretty solid view of everybody, and kind of see what their vibe was. And you could tell that he like had he seemed like pestered, is almost the way that it looked. They were saying on the commentary that I guess he felt a little bit slighted by not getting the Cody fight that you had mentioned, or whatever the case was there, that he had a point to prove. So it was a little unfortunate that he had that sort of level of I guess whatever you want to call it, just kind of a bug in his ear, because it, like, he had times where, like, he was sort of like acknowledging what was happening, acknowledging the shots that were coming back at him, like, just, yeah, oh, good one kind of stuff, or like, oh, you thought that's all you have kind of thing. But he wasn't doing enough himself to swing it in his direction. So it's like, I think that maybe him being a little bit agitated played a little part in this. Perhaps that could be speculation, but either which way, if you're picking single shots and not turning up volume against a guy like this, who is giving you a lot to think about at all times, the outcome kind of does right itself.
Yeah, this was another fight where I just felt like Felipe was going to do the same thing up until the finish. I knew in my heart Miles Johns was not going to, like, I mean, he didn't even take that bad of a beating. Like, he's just one of these dudes that just doesn't wear damage kind of deal, but he is getting touched up. The striking numbers, I mean, seems a little low, but who am I to say on the ones landed? And then yeah, this was probably, I think this was right when the roller coaster, like this, we're on the uphill right here kind of deal, and then the
Oh
next
yeah.
one is when we drop kind of deal. So
Yes, exactly, and that is another big note of this whole thing. I was mentioning to Chase, and I talked about it a little bit yesterday on the rewatch stream, that there were some times during this event that I was getting a little agitated, because being that I was so close to the walkout, I had to stand up and sit down a whole lot of times, because people were rushing to go, line up to where the fighters were walking out and stuff. And it started to get really laborious. It started to become like, started wear on me a little bit. And then that was paired with the energy in the building, and that was a little bit of a roller coaster. So yeah, when it comes to like the highs and lows of this card, you definitely felt that in the building as well, because there were times like you couldn't always hear it on the commentary or on the broadcast rather. You couldn't always hear how many times there was like this odd murmur of like, kind of discontent. There were a couple of times you could hear the booing. There was more times that people were booing pretty audibly that weren't picked up on the broadcast. So like the Dustin Jacoby fight is like the one that sticks out, is like where you could really hear it. But trust me, there was
Well,
more
we'll
than
talk
that.
about that one.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know. We'll get to it when we get to it, of course. But like, so my point in saying all of that is just that like when you talk about the like the energy levels, they were kind of up and down in general. So there were some like odd times in this fight that it was a little bit off. This fight coming up, of course, brought the energy up to a nice peak, or I mean, or at least got the peak started. We were on the incline with this fight coming up after these fights that did not have finishes here. So let's move on to it. It is Sean Woodson versus Fernando Padilla. Some oddness in this fight in general. When it came to Padilla, I thought there was just some stuff that I had seen live that I was like, he looked a little bit off.
Yeah, well, what I'll say is this was another one that I thought was going to decision. I thought this 100% Sean Woodson, decision merchant, pillow hands. Was I wrong? But I thought this was going to be one. Did I think last fight? I thought that was going to be more exciting than it ended up being, because it was fun, but it wasn't great. This one I thought was going to decision, but this was going to be like a really good showing. And was it a quick and fun showing? Sean Woodson is just elite at boxing. This is a crazy weight for him to be at. I mean, both of these dudes, for them to be at this weight. Um, and yeah, finished with 2 seconds left. Padilla just couldn't take it anymore, and that was a really quick flurry. And he got up pretty quick too, and like gave him its props or whatever. But Sean Woodson he can land some pretty clean strikes, and it doesn't have to be powerful, because we know he's not powerful really.
Well, I mean, powerful enough to put away Padilla, I
True.
suppose. Both these guys super tall and lanky with really skinny legs. That was one of the things that, like, in seeing it in person too, I was like, man, it really does, like, it's very apparent. You can see it on the broadcast, of course, but like in person, it was just like, man, I would think that both these guys would have been just spamming leg kicks to each other. I mean, maybe they didn't want to worry about their own legs being compromised because of that, but like with any person who's fighting these guys going forward that does not have the same frame as either of these guys, a little bit more meat on the legs, that needs to be your number one go-to attack, because there is so much like or so little, I guess I should say, there, that I mean, like, I would imagine that the impact would be pretty painful for these guys when it came to taking shots to the bone. um this was the first fight also I wanted to mention, because I thought that I saw it a couple of times. Maybe I'm mistaken, but like I thought that Padilla was kind of slipping a little bit. Like it seemed like there might have been like a little bit of slippery mat syndrome going on at this event. I don't know if there's other times that that it
I can
happened
tell you
that.
some.
Yeah, I would say. I mean, maybe you saw a couple of them, because it also felt like Colby was slipping a couple as well. But
Drakkar Close, and then Bruno Silva.
so yeah, so I mean, it was a little bit strange. I don't know what that was about, but just something I wanted to put out there. Um, I mean, I did appreciate that Padilla was keeping the pressure on, but he just ended up eating a bunch of shots because of the forward motion. So that was a little bit of a detriment in his side of things. And the big thing that I wanted to mention was that reaction from the leg kick that Padilla did take. Like based on all of what I was just saying there, obviously there was some some capitalization happening when the leg kicks were thrown, because Padilla got spun the fuck out off of a leg kick that didn't look like it was that crazy, but he just went flying off of it.
Yeah, well, that's what I wanted to. So you talked about why don't they throw leg kicks more, or why didn't they? Sean Woodson, I can tell you, he has the leg mobility of his 300-pound version self, kind of deal. Like, and I'm not trying to joke. Like, I really think that's what it is. Like, his low kicks, he just like lobs them out there. They're kind of like slow. They're like real clubbing kind of deal. He doesn't have like, you would think somebody with stilts. Like they'd be able to stab with them, but he really doesn't have like that leg speed. Like I don't know if it's his hips, the thighs. I don't know, but like he also tried to mix in a high kick. I don't know if you saw that. It was also very slow, but like eventually, he's trying. He's trying to mix in some stuff because he knows the boxing is not going to work forever. Not, I mean, it will, but he needs other things to mix in.
Sure.
I also think Sean Woodson, his boxing is just we've known it's elite. Like it's just that good. I also think it was kind of funny that he was tangled up with Padilla on the ground. Like he like jumped on him in the first round, and I was like, "Whoa, Sean Woodson, you better calm down, brother. Are you hopping in guard here?" And then he almost got subbed with like an Americana or something. Not Americana.
He
I'm
might
trying to
have
think what it
been
was.
a triangle for a second there, but then was able to slip it. If I'm not, that might have been a different fight, but I thought that was that one.
It was something funky, but yeah, it was almost like, "Oops, Sean Woodson, don't be stupid now." And then he definitely got up and did not go back to the ground. So shout out him.
Yeah. And I mean, the knockout was heavy, and like you said, 2 seconds left in round one, definitely cool to see him able to do it. Clean string of strikes, clean connections, got the job done. Woodson says, rank me and run me my 50. Sounds good on the mic, too. I thought that was all right. The guy has a strong boxing base, as you had said. I mean, obviously been doing it for a little minute and seeing some success. Run him his 50 and rank him. I mean, I don't think he ended up getting the 50, but,
No.
I mean, a ranking, is it out of the question?
I think I saw people talking about this, beating an unranked person and then asking for a rank or something like that. But
Yeah, I mean, I guess that does make sense, perhaps. But I mean, I'm talking more in like the big picture. Like, I mean, maybe does he deserve a ranked guy to get to jump him into the ranking now?
yeah, at featherweight, just because I do want to double check who would be. I mean, Giga. That's somebody off the top of my head. Maybe okay, featherweight. Okay, so yeah, I mean Edson Barbosa. I think he's kind of booked with somebody. Dan Ige. Maybe that was thrown out. Sean Woodson, Dan Ige. Maybe that was
I
thrown out
thought
in
I
the
saw
Discord.
somebody say that. Yeah, I thought I saw somebody say something like that, and I was like, I mean, that seems to be like a big jump in my opinion, but that's just because Danny Gay is just that dude right now, and I think that
Yeah,
like it's one of those things. Like Danny Gay is actually a good example of a guy who like wins in his losses based on being so game as he is. Like I don't think that they're gonna have him fight down purely off of
yeah.
like the respect that he has garnered and like the fan support at this point, perhaps. But I mean, it's not out of the question. I mean, maybe that does make sense. I don't know.
No, I think Giga. I think right off the top of my head when I said that, and I double checked the standings and I looked at the people around him, I think it makes sense because, like you said, Dan Ige is a superstar. Like Giga's just a nobody. Bryce Mitchell's right around them, and then Edson Barbosa is about to fight again. I think, and then Lerone Murphy is also too big for Sean Woodson. Giga, I
Sure.
think, is kind of close enough.
Yeah, the sweet spot. I can appreciate that. So fair enough. I mean, we'll see if he ends up getting it. But overall, this was a nice way to start the finishes because there were a good couple of them on this card, and I mean, not necessarily like a knockdown drag out fight overall. I thought that this fight was kind of a poor showing for Padilla. Um, they had said on the commentary this. I did not realize this in the moment, but he had taken his gloves off as if he was going to retire. He did not, of course. But I was like, I mean, I didn't know if it was that bad, but it was not great. So if you were having second thoughts about fighting, perhaps it wouldn't have been the craziest thing in the world. Either way, I think that Padilla is sadly, and this really does speak to the strength of the Mexican roster in general. I'd say that he's kind of on the lower end of that, but that's also just because there are so many phenomenal Mexican fighters.
So I think this is, since you noted this one first, I think we're getting to a point where people either they just want to take their gloves off in the ring and just like walk out with them because like why have them on anymore? If people can take them off when they retire, I can take them off when I'm not, kind of deal. Why wait to the back? Or they're trying to get that interview. Like I don't know, like get rid of the, not the, fake them out. Like oh, take the gloves off and then they come talk to me, kind of deal. Obviously, Padilla is not the type of dude to get that honor. Like the same, but I don't know. There was a couple different times where people were taking their gloves off, and the Discord is, "Oh my God, he's gonna retire! Oh my God!" So I think, I mean, but there are some others that are warranted for that.
Yeah, and be careful doing that because we saw how it worked out for Clay Guida. So,
Yeah,
you do that now and stay in the game. You run up against Chase Hooper, and that's not a great night for a lot of people.
true.
So, yeah, I mean, I guess that is that one. Let's move on to one of the fights that I was happiest about. This was the fight I was looking forward to the most on this card going into it. This and, of course, the Cub Swanson fight, which I can't wait to talk about. But Joel Alvarez versus Drakkar Klose. I am very high on Joel Alvarez. Uh, After seeing what he did to Elvis Brenner, I really see greatness in Joel Alvarez. And this was pretty much exactly the fight I wanted to see from him against a fighter that I like in Drakkar Klose. I think that Drakkar Klose's only real detriment outside of this fight is the fact that he had been a little bit inactive for a while for various reasons, from what I understand. Also, do want to note that Drakkar Klose did recently lose his brother, which is very sad. So, best wishes to his family. Unfortunate to have a loss after a loss. But as far as the Joel Alvarez side of things, like I said, I thought that Drakkar Klose was a good fight for him, and Drakkar Klose had a lot of good elements that might have given Alvarez some things to think about and have to go up against and work his way through. But Alvarez, with the high fight IQ that he has, man, is he was just able to really do his thing, and this, like I said, was exactly what I wanted to see out of him.
Yep, I definitely have the Spanish flag on the way for my guy here. Joel Alvarez, gosh, he's just really good. Like he's just like the Terminator. Like he's out there and he's navigating and he's targeted to do anything that's going to win the fight. He does a lot of different things, and I think the ending sequence, Drakkar Klose, he like slipped a little bit, but he got like back on track, and then he got bombed with like a straight left or something like that, which it wasn't that crazy of a shot, but it just like threw him off balance, and he's flying towards the cage, and then he gets and then Joel lands it was a little knee, and it was more effective than we really thought because he ended up catching him in like a half guillotine, and he's just like pounding his face. It was nuts. It was a great finish.
Yeah. The sequence was pretty wild, and it all really comes from, like I had mentioned, the fight IQ is something that I got to harp on when it comes to Alvarez, because what I noticed from him based on this fight and especially the Brenner fight is that he completely tailors his fight to his opponent and what his opponent is putting out in the fight. He is one of those guys. They talk about people that download the information. Piotr Yan comes to mind with that. Guys who will like drop a first round, just gathering information to utilize later on. Alvarez has perfected it to the point where he doesn't need to drop around in order to do that. So having that immediate understanding of what he's encountering and being able to react to it in real time, I think sets him apart in such a distinct way. And then it showed here because Close, like you were saying, he had a couple of decent moments there, especially that slam takedown that he had was pretty impactful. You could definitely hear it in the building. But Alvarez was able to negate that, get right back up, and that, like you said, the sequence was pretty fucking solid. I mean, he stung him. The knee didn't even look like it was that harsh, but it had
Yeah.
enough on it that was able to do its job. And then the shots to the side of the head, fucking love to see it, man. And I did want to acknowledge this right here that Toby put into the chat, saying that Alvarez is a smarter, better version of Jalen Turner. I mean, I think that might not be too far off, and that is essentially what you would want out of the build and style of fight that both of those guys have. Like, if he is an evolved version of Jalen Turner, then that's a dangerous motherfucker right there. So he's showing it time and time again. The last note that I have is it perfectly caps it off: 22 wins, 22 finishes. That is fucking nuts.
Oh, that is actually crazy. That's a truth. Like it's
I
actually that serious.
If
Yeah,
I heard correctly on the commentary.
yeah, he's nuts, man. The 17 submissions in his back pocket is what's kind of crazy.
Guys got it all, and that's what. So I mean, I was saying it, on the night of. I've been, wrong before, and I will certainly be wrong again. But I will put it out here that Joel Alvarez has, to me, the makings of championship material. That
Hey,
I'm putting it out there early just to say that, because I do think that that at least the potential is there. I
yeah,
get
I
getting that
mean,
feeling.
I 100% agree. I see the vision. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's purely a vision right now, but I mean, as this dude continues to rise, I mean, he needs to be getting high level opposition like immediately. In my opinion, I don't think that there's any more waiting that needs to happen with him. No more feel out time. If there was ever a guy that deserves a little bit of a hot shotting, I mean, he's already. It's not even a hot shotting at this point. He's already fought a number of guys to warrant it. Like, bring this guy into the fold for real. He deserves a ranked guy, and I'm talking like a decently ranked one at that.
Yeah, 100%.
So yes, really good. That was actually one of the hypest I got on the evening. I was yelling pretty loud for Joel Alvarez just because I was looking forward to the performance that we ended up getting, and it really does come off of what I had said too about I was really rating Brenner very high going into that fight, and the way that he was able to pick him apart, I thought was a good indicator of what you're going to continue to see, and that has been proven right.
Yeah, 100%.
All right. Now, moving on to one of the biggest moments of the evening, definitely in the building. This is Michael Johnson versus Otman Azaitar. Uh, I just have to, before we get too deep into it, have to say this is Otman, Mr. Potatoes in the Bag Azaitar. If you know, you know. Mr. Fight Island, bag full of potatoes. We don't have to go too deep into the story there. But anyway, um, so Michael Johnson putting on a display for the ages here. What did you think, Chase?
Dude, Toby came in here and said Michael Johnson KO, right? And I said, guys, this ain't happening. Michael Johnson's gonna win, but don't listen to Toby. That's not a good one in my opinion. And what do I and what do I know? Because apparently I just don't know shit. Michael Johnson comes out here and bombs him. Like, it doesn't take very long. I mean, 3 minutes, yeah, about 3 minutes into the fight. Wow, he came out and did his thing. That's kind of upsetting. Honestly, not upsetting, but like upsetting that Toby was so right and I was so wrong. I think it was a good one though.
Well, I think that the unfortunate point on Azaitar's side, before we go too deep into the glazing that I want to uh, lay upon Michael Johnson for this one, because I got a couple more things to say there. I think that on Azaitar's side, he might suffer from just a bit of a weak chin, and I hate to put that on the guy, but 3 KOs in a row seems like there might be a little bit of a Glass Joe kind of situation going on there, and this certainly doesn't help that perception. But yeah, I mean that being said, I mean the first round was slightly slow. Um, Johnson got a pair of shots that did stumble Azaitar late, especially the straight left at the very end. Kind of looked like, oh man, well if that affected him, then there might be some problems going forward. So I think I even picked up on that at the time. I was like, oh, he did look like he got a little stumbled there for a second. So if that's the case now, then round two might not be so great for him. And then sure enough, round two, the shot from Johnson gets through amidst an exchange. That was also the interesting part about this knockout, was that this wasn't like he picked the exact right shot and it just landed exactly as he wanted to. They were both throwing at the time. And the thing I wanted to mention, and this is the veteran aspect of Michael Johnson, because this dude, his resume speaks for itself. The level of competition that he's faced in the past. This dude has been doing it, like he said in his post fight. This dude has been doing it. He is one of these guys who's been out there really about this fight life. The veteran status that he has was shown when he did the push off during the exchange. If you go back and watch the sequence, he's taking some shots back, or at least some shots are being thrown back at him. And at one point, I think he eats one and he ends up pushing off with his forearm. It created the space that allowed him to have the exact right connection point for the shot that ended up doing it. So, I mean, that really was extremely clutch to allow that shot to be the right one and get the finish that he was looking for. I mean, not even looking for, the one that just ended up happening to happen because of that. And that only comes from a real veteran understanding of what you're supposed to do in a sequence like that. So.
And to make another point, this is the in the post fight, he said he's not retiring. He's not doing anything. He's not going anywhere. So that is something to note. But this dude does have 19 losses, which is really crazy to note. That might be the most that I've seen. No, Anthony Smith has.
Oh, no way. I mean, I think fucking Clay Guida has more losses than
Oh,
that.
oh, you're probably right. You're probably right. But it might be close. It might be close. But still, that's a lot of losses. And, he's not the oldest, but, to keep going, man, shout out him.
Dude, yeah, 38
Game
years
is
old
game.
and not stopping anytime soon, he says. Let's fucking go. I mean, and I did want to mention that Florida fucks with Michael Johnson because I've seen him fight twice live now, both times getting the win. So
Yeah.
he has a home here in Florida when it comes to this fight game. And yeah, I mean, shout out to his family as well. He was saying that he's got family that literally will pack up the car and drive 15 hours to come watch him fight. That's a really nice thing to hear, that he's got the support back home, because not everybody has that. So that's cool too. And the one last thing I did want to mention, just because this does play into the potato bags thing just a little bit, and then we can put this to the side. I'm not going to harp on this, but they said on the broadcast that Otman Azaitar is friends with the king of Morocco. Friends in high places, they said on the commentary, because Michael Johnson was saying, why is this guy even fighting if he's out here hanging out with these super high level government people in his country of origin? Just something to note. And it certainly does add a little bit more weight to the whole situation on Fight Island with the bag that was apparently full of potatoes, but Ottman says he has no knowledge of. There was definitely something weird going on there. I'm just, the nature of the way that I cover the sport, I couldn't let that one slide without making a note of it. Just had to put that out here now, put a pin in that if we have to come back to it at some point.
Good deal.
And Chase will remain silent. All right, let's move on. All right, we got this next one was one of the more, I think, frustrating fights on the night, especially after such an amazing knockout from Michael Johnson. This is Navajo Sterling versus Tuco Tokos. Now, this was not a bad performance for Sterling. It was, to me, a performance that was frustrating. Like I had said, he got me more frustrated than anything else. Did he deserve the win? Yes. Could he have done better and different things? I think also yes. What do you think, Chase?
To start, I think in this specific promotion, well, in this sport in general, we have a lot of people that are very interesting looking. And Navajo Sterling, I don't think we noticed it off rip, but this dude he's got caveman features too. And shout out him, dude. He's fucking jacked, So I really like Navajo, and I really wanted them to get the knockout. But considering this is the first fight, let me just double check. The first fight that didn't end in knockout for him? Yes. I mean, I think he did relatively well. Tuco Tucos is not the best, but he's a decent enough dude who'll fight through a lot of stuff. That's a good test. Like if you've been knocking everybody out, it's like, okay, we're gonna give you a dude who we know is hard to knock out, kind of deal. And that's what this is. And you can tell Navajo was wearing it, later in the fight, because he's never been here, especially at the competitive level, this far into a fight. But he was still doing great things. He was still trying to throw in the combinations. He was still mixing in the kicks, and his grappling is really, really solid. Like he can get up, and that's really the key, is just getting up. And then if you can get back to your feet, then boom, you're good to go. Another thing that we noted in his Contender Series fight is that little tick that he had when he was like wipe his. I didn't see it that much in the third round. I think he went back to it because I think he was gassed as hell, and like that's just kind of like a, an easy like reset method for him. But I think he did well not having like a tell kind of deal. That, I mean, it wasn't really anything that mattered. It was just kind of interesting to know, and I think we said exactly that. But I don't think he did that more than like once or twice. And again, he made it through all the rounds and he didn't quit. So shout out him. He's a big dude.
Yeah, no, all of your points are completely 100% correct. I fuck with all of what you're saying, like 100% there. The thing that was frustrating to me was I think that, and like you said, this is his first official fight in the organization coming off the Contender Series.
Though that too, yeah.
Um, I think that it might have been a little bit of a hesitancy because he wanted to secure the win and wanted to play it a little bit safe perhaps, but the frustrating thing was that he just didn't seem to have a sense of urgency in picking up on very obvious openings that he created. That was the thing that was really the frustrating part of it, was that he was creating really nice openings for himself. First round, stumbles Sokos, doesn't follow up at all. No urgency there. Defense, like you said, very good. Octagon awareness, also very good. Shout out to Badger. We were talking about that a little bit yesterday. Just did not show killer instinct. And I think that that was just a little bit of an apprehension on his part. Toko's capitalized on that aspect of it a few times himself, where it was like, well, if you're not gonna take the openings, then I'm just gonna go back to my game plan. I think that a better fighter could have done a lot more with the openings that Sterling was leaving, because Tokos, he like you said, he's not great. He's lumbering and clunky is the way that I would describe him, and that was certainly apparent in person. Like, seeing him move, it was like you could see that he was a step behind Navajo, who was not exactly a super fast guy to begin with himself. I mean, he's not like out there like doing super crazy explosive motions often in the fight. He's more of like a plodding, methodical kind of guy, and that was apparent in his Contender Series fight as well. So to see him out there taking pictures, especially at the end of the fight, was really kind of frustrating. And that was where the crowd, like, I don't know if it was really very apparent on the broadcast, but the crowd was not too happy with it, because I think they were picking up on it as well. And I would have to say it was a little bit warranted, dude. Go out there and try for the finish, man. I mean, but again, like you said, first fight, I'm not going to be super mad about it, just a little frustrated.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what I'm going to hammer home. I think okay, so this is somebody who I don't see him as like a natural born killer kind of deal. I think of him as like this is a homegrown talent. And like I think with his first fight, the experience that you're wanting from him, like, the know that, he's injured, smell the blood, go for it. I don't think he has that yet, because up until this point, it's just I smash and they fall. So after he hurts them, which he did a couple times to the body, like Tuco was kind of like walking, like folding away, guarding up. And why, in Navajo's mind, why should I press this? The next interaction, once I get him hurt again, he's just going to fall. Like, at least that's probably what I would assume. It's like, eventually he's going to fall. No need for me to go a step further. Like, I'm doing great here. It's going to happen. I got 3 more rounds of it. But some of these people, man, they're really hard to finish.
Sure. Yeah. And he even said it himself in his post fight. He's learning on the job. I mean, it's an early part of his career. And I'm not trying to be super hard on him. I know it sounds a little bit harsh. I just, it was just that it was it was more frustrating, not because he wasn't doing good things. It was frustrating because he was doing good things. I think that's really the way to look at it. It's like, dude, you're creating a lot of opportunities for yourself, and it would have just been nice to see him capitalize on those when he made them happen in the first place. But I think that yet another one, we were talking about this in the Maverick fight with the two of them. I think that this is another guy that has a lot of potential to come into his own, and based on a performance like this, a little bit more opposition than he's faced earlier on, he's a guy that I would certainly like to not see super hot shotted in any way. You know what I mean? Like, he needs to really come into his own a little bit, get a couple more fights under his belt to get that experience and become the more, a full-on version of what you want to see out of a contender going forward. So give him all of that and good to go. I mean, nothing too negative.
I think after this one, I'll make the point that I think normally the matchman, not the matchmakers, but whoever sets the card, whoever puts them in order, I normally think they do a good job of catching us with like a banger at like a time that we need it. And I think this was supposed to be a banger. Unfortunately, it wasn't. And people get to ask why Joel Alvarez wasn't on the main card, basically, which warranted. There was a lot of good fights on the prelims, and it's kind of hard to put them, who would you really want first? I mean, Knutson is not really a card opener. Like, you could have had the Davy Grant kind of deal if you would have thought Ramon Tavares was going to come out here and do some good. But I don't know. Like, this one, I was hoping for the KO, but I still think Navajo, 27 years old, like a 6-0. I mean, it's good. He's got this.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And the crowd is going to be a little bit spoiled after two really solid knockouts in a row. So it was fine. All of
3.
that aspect. Well, oh yeah, three. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Right. Woodson was before that too. Yeah. So I mean, it's fine. All of that aspect of it was really not a problem. I think it really was more so because of the circumstances as opposed to just not being a finish.
Yeah, 100%.
So is what it is, but this is definitely where we entered like the bigger lull of everything, because this is where the energy certainly started to get a little bit off going into the Adrian Yanez versus Daniel Marcos fight. Um, I was fearing that we might have been entering a little bit of a cursed period here. I tweeted a couple of things out. Glad that it ended up picking up after this, but this was a slightly dicey territory, even though this was not a terrible fight. It was just not the greatest fight, I guess is what I would class it as. What do you think?
See, I actually want to maybe have a conversation about that because
Okay.
I often be talking about they need to shorten the runtime of these UFC cards because I couldn't imagine doing 7.5 hours inside the arena. Like, coming up on this point, like you said, this is where we're getting kind of snooze fest because Marcos, oh my gosh, like this dude, one, he's the dirty cheater, and two, he just like first in the third round, bro was taking strolls like Nate Diaz, just walking away,
Yeah.
and like it refusing to engage with the entertainment portion. Like it's kind of. I don't know. Adrian Yanez, I'm not really worried about. One thing I'm worried about is how his name is Yanez without an extra Y. Whatever, but like I think at this point, like I'm sitting here questioning, like if I was at the arena, like I'd be ready to go home type of deal. Like we got to get this on the road. Like I'm tired kind of deal. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there was some times during this one where I kind of was, looking around, kind of taking in the atmosphere a little bit more so than the actual fight itself. To an extent, I mean, there was enough to kind of keep interest throughout. But it was like diverted attention at times. One thing, as you had mentioned, that certainly was eye catching was the double eye poke nut shot combo from Marcos. That's a rare one. I mean, dude, that dirty cheater. I mean, that certainly is one way to describe it. Fucking A, this guy.
I think Toby stole the joke from Nav, but Chris Weidman was taking notes. Is a great fucking joke.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that was pretty wild. And then for him to immediately start extending the fingers right when they got back into the action, bro. What the fuck, dude? Come on, man. So yeah, that was pretty bad. I mean, Marcos did land a decent shot that had Yanez on the back foot for a second there too. So like you were mentioning him kind of doing like the walk away deal, but like they both had their moments of kind of disengaging, which was a little weird. But I mean, Yanez's striking is pretty clean. I mean, left hook lands in the second pretty nicely. Unfortunate that Yanez gassed out in the third because there were openings for attacks that he didn't entertain. And like he just ended up going to the clinch a couple of times. That like was kind of unfortunate, but I do think that it really was just because he had gassed out there a little bit. Um, I wanted to kind of posit if this might have possibly been a little bit of a robbery. I mean, this was a split decision. Marcos gets the split decision win, and there's a 30-27 in there. That seemed a little bit strange to me.
Another thing to note is Keith Peterson. He just kind of lost the what is the word? Because he controls a lot of things that go on in the cage. He's protecting the safety of the fighters. He
Of course.
let Marcos get away with too much to the point where he was visibly like shaking his head, like I can't, I don't know what to do, guys. And I think that was an issue. He should have been able to take control of that, take a fucking point first off. You go nut shot and eye poke, like accidental or not, like which one was accidental? Like can it both? Like anyway, so I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one. I'd have to go back and rewatch like the all of like Peterson's part of everything, because I do believe was he also the referee for Manel Kopp, and
Yeah, I think so.
so I mean that there was issues in that one as well. So Peterson is
Alcohol and cigarettes, brother.
he's certainly getting himself on the radar, and that little soundbite does not help much in that regard. I mean, like I said, I'd have to go back and rewatch. Of course, I try to give a good amount of leeway to these referees because of how tough of a job it is. If there are things that are noticeable that way, Keith has had a couple of them, and I mean, it's. I again, I'm trying to be as fair as possible with it, but I can like just off the top of my head think of a couple of them not too long ago that really are all starting to add up in that direction, and they are all kind of pointing back to Peterson. So just something to keep a note on, because there was actually a time, this is a little behind the scenes, a little inside baseball, but like I had at one time had a video in the works that was basically about Keith Peterson with this exact subject matter in mind. And I actually backed off of it because, like, going over the ones that I had on the list at the time, I was like, maybe I'm being a little too harsh by going this route at this time. But now that's going back to the Ian Gary versus Neil Magny fight, where Ian Gary was hanging on the top of the cage for a good amount of the fight, to the point where I was like, that is illegal, right? Like, because you're just letting this shit happen. But that was all the way back then. Now there might be a little bit more warranting for it. So I don't know. That's a little bit of an aside there. But either which way, what did you think about the decision though?
I mean, listen, I didn't think it was split decision was kind of interesting because I think without a point deduction, I think Marcos was skating by like easily, in my opinion, and that's why at the end he was just like bullshitting, walking away, like going into the ceremony early. But I don't think it's as impressive as some other people in the division. Like, I mean, if you look at his record, what's the difference between him and Umar? But they got a lot of fights. They fought no ranked people. So next Marcos should have a ranked person, you would assume. Um,
Well, I guess the definitiveness of the finish, or the the methods of victory for Umar might be a little bit different there, but
yeah, I mean, but like, what can you say too much? Marcos is not the most exciting dude, but he is winning, so you're gonna have to throw him competition at some point.
yeah, it's a good point. I mean, that was in the moment in the building. I do remember saying to my buddy who I was watching with, yeah, this dude needs to get down off the top of the fucking cage, because there really is not too much to be celebrating here right now.
Yeah.
And sad to say, I was like, he called out Jose Aldo, and I was like, that's wild, but sadly at this point, not super wild anymore. You know what I mean? RIP Elite Aldo, perhaps at this point, which is a really hard thing to have to say because of how, much of a legend he is to a lot of people, including myself. But, the call out maybe somewhat makes sense. I don't know.
Yeah. Um, I didn't really care. This dude can fight
Right.
whoever the fuck next.
Exactly. I guess that really is the bigger takeaway in all of this, is just that it was not inspiring in any way. So who really gives a fuck?
Yeah, and shout out the Honey Badger, man. We're
Oh,
moving on to
yeah.
the next fucking fight, and it's definitely a fraud check. You're gonna want to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to the Honey Badger. The next fight is indeed Dustin Jacoby versus Vitor Petrino. Petrino, who somewhat had already been fraud checked. I guess this is the nail in the fraud checking coffin, so to speak. This was kind of like where I would say was the lowest point of the evening until the finish. So this is where you could hear on the commentary, I mean on the broadcast rather, you could hear audibly in the crowd that there was a lot of unrest going on at this point, especially coming off the last fight that we just talked about. So how did it all play out to you, Chase?
Absolutely needed this. While I was watching the fight, I realized Vitor Petrino sucks. He's really bad, and it's perfect that it ended with him losing by knockout. Because if he would have skated by in a decision, or win or lose, whatever, I would have been upset because this dude sucks. This dude is bad. So the fact that he got knocked out, I'm very, listen, very, very happy for Dustin Jacoby to get that knockout the way he did. Because man, did it make my night. Even though it was a boring 12 minutes until that happened.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to Petrino's credit, he did keep a good amount of pressure on early. He had Jacoby on the back foot for most of round one, so I guess there's something to be said for that. He wasn't necessarily backing down, which is, good. And I mean, Jacoby early on was not giving him a lot to back down from. He would describe it as a very patient performance. That's certainly one way to describe it. I guess in the end, that does kind of make sense. That does track, but leading up to it, like you said, it was kind of touch and go in that regard because it did not feel that way in the moment. It just felt like a lot of nothing. Um, with the lack of output from Jacoby, it was very, very lucky that he finally found that KO shot. I mean, I'm not saying that it was a lucky shot. He did set it up. I mean, like he was looking for it and getting himself to that point. I'm just saying it was lucky that he actually achieved it because had he not, this would have definitely been, one that people would be talking about as an absolute snooze fest. But the shot that finally landed was really nice, to be fair. The follow through was complete. He landed that thing and kept on going. He spun Petrino out for real, for real. Petrino was looking like Fernando Padilla was when he spun out off of that leg kick, but that was off of a knockout in this case. So nice to see that and for it to change the atmosphere because had that not happened, man, it was looking like we were entering some dark times.
We need to build up a Brazilian community to find out just how prominent these names are, because I just can't imagine that the people, main card, like Vitor Petrino, why are you on the main card with Dustin Jacoby over all these great fights? And you have been dog water. Like, I don't
Well,
get
but
it.
okay, all right, come on. Let's put this into perspective, though. I mean, going into the Anthony Smith fight, he was undefeated, so he had gotten some decent wins before that. People were probably thinking, oh, well, the Anthony Smith, Anthony Smith is a veteran. I mean, he's a dude who's seen it all. He was able to use the veteran status. Maybe it was a
Retired
fluke.
his next fight.
There you go. I mean, it could have been just a complete fluke in the moment, give this guy another shot to prove that he's really this big deal. I mean, he was a minus 320. Obviously, fucking Vegas was thinking that was the case. So, and then putting him up against Dustin Jacoby was also kind of in that same category because it was like, okay, well, if he's going to fight a veteran guy in Smith and Smith was able to take him out, well, let's see if it really, really was a fluke because we'll give him another veteran guy who has been finished before. I mean, Dustin Jacoby's had a rocky road of it, 9 losses on his record. So, I think that it made sense that this was the way that it ended up working out as far as the pecking order goes. But broad check twice in a row. Yeah. I mean, that is, that does start to show the truth of the situation.
Yeah, agreeing with Badger. The double fraud check is pretty nuts.
Yeah, exactly. Shout out to him. But yeah, I mean that's really all that I got to say about this one. I mean it was boring until it wasn't, and Jacoby acknowledged it, said yeah it was a patient performance. Glad that it was able to turn itself around because, like I said, we were entering dark water if it had not.
Yeah, 100%. And this is the first of the last 4 round 3 finishes, and this one, thankfully, the slowest one was first.
Sure. All right. So before we move on to this next fight, I did want to make one note that I picked up on from the rewatch. Did you see that they did a video package for the retirement of Jack Shore?
Yes, I absolutely saw that. Questioned it myself right on when it happened. I said, "Wow, but Stipe had to wait 7 days, something like that."
I mean, I guess he had to wait till the next event, but yeah, I mean, you're right. It should have been on the day. First of all, for that in Stipe's case, but just even in general, I was just like,
Yeah, who's Jack Shore like compared to the
yeah,
UFC?
yeah. I mean, like, and look, no offense to Jack Shore. I mean, he was on a really nice win streak there for quite some time. Did some good things for Wales when it comes to the higher levels of the sport and all of that, but it just seemed a little bit odd to me. I wanted to make a note of that, especially considering that, like you said, with Stipe, Michelle Watterson getting one, I guess you could say maybe a little bit more warranted, but I mean, like, I'm just saying it's a little bit odd who they're deciding to give these to and who they are not. I mean, and the one that really sticks out to me most above all of them is Andrei Arlovsky. Whether or not he wanted it or not, I don't care. I mean, like, there should have been some acknowledgement of a former champion, leaving the organization, even if he's not leaving the sport.
Yeah, why is it a matter of like, hey, do you want to, like, you want a video or something? Like, why is it not like, oh my god, yeah, like, duh, make them a little, like, why is it not from the boss man? Like, hey, you should make Andrei Arlovsky a little retirement video. Don't tell him like it's gonna be on the night kind of deal. Like, I don't know.
And
Just
and again, if you're not gonna do that, but then you're gonna do it for Jack Shore, it struck me as very odd. So I just wanted to point that out real quick. But
yeah, and now that you bring that back up, I do remember that a lot. It's kind of weird because it takes you out of the promotion for some reason. It's like, did I like change the channel? Is this Cage? Is this like Cage Warriors? Like, what is this like kind of deal? I don't know.
well, and you make a good point when it is a guy like Jack Shore, because they're having to pull highlights throughout his entire career, but a good amount of his career was not in the organization. I mean, like, he had a good couple of wins in the organization, which is fine. I always was a fan of Jack Shore. I wanted to see him do more. But it just the warranting of that specifically. I guess, like Badger's saying in the chat, it probably was for the UK contingency. And I guess that's somewhat fair, but still, whether you're pandering or not, it just seemed like an odd one to be doing that for.
Well, and to make another point is, if Stipe could have waited, if they were like, oh, I mean, he could, we could wait to put that out until after we know he's retired or whatever. Why not just wait till the London card to do Jack Shore? I know that it'll be way long ago, but wouldn't the home crowd like to see that? Like, oh, there's a thing for Jack Shore, like randomly, and it just like throws it back in their mind, like, oh, Jack Shore.
Yeah, no, I think you make a great point. So yeah, just something that we picked up on there. Anyway, moving on. This was Manel Kopp versus Bruno Silva. I think actually turned out to be one of the more entertaining fights on this card, in the building for sure, just based on the way that the two of these guys were fighting. I mean, it was just an odd thing to witness. Like, just the movement and everything. Like, we talk about the fighters having unorthodox styles. This was like unorthodox versus damn dirty cheater. If you thought that fucking Marcos was a cheater, like, we were in the building thinking, God damn it was so nice to see that Silva got his just desserts for all of the bullshit he was pulling. But then, plot twist, come to find out that might have been a little bit of dirtiness on Manel's side in the finishing sequence. So this was a little bit all over the place. What do you think of this one?
First, I want to note, Manel Kopp in this picture has abs. Why does he show up to fights without abs? Listen, I don't want to make that. It's crazy to me. Brandon Moreno is kind of the same deal. Brandon Royval too, I think, is kind of in the same boat there. But I don't know. It's just something to note. Two, Manel Kopp wearing size XXL cup, and that is the reason that he's getting kicked in the dick with these teep kicks, is because it's sticking 15 inches out. Like, it's crazy to me, because like those if you notice the teeps that Bruno they were in, I'm trying to think of the way that the stances were. They were opposite stances. So when Bruno was throwing the kick from his back leg teep up, he's kicking him right in the dick, but he's not trying. It's just in the way kind of deal. So that is to note. Second, or third, excuse me, Bruno Silva. He did not fight like he did against Cody Durden. Like, he was out there doing the bullshit, like doing bullshit. Like, I honestly, he looked nervous or worried. I don't know. It just didn't look like he was confident. And to note, he was I don't know if I want to say he was losing against Cody Durden up until he knocked him out in the third round, but on a nice finish streak, I wanted to see him look a little more confident in his striking. Manel Kopp kind of, I don't know, he was the aggressor, and he got into, people call it the flow state these days, but I mean, he was just in a rhythm, like, and he was trying to show off a little bit. And to make an extra point, when he did the Izzy thing, is like, brother, you're his biggest fan, of course. And then to get on the mic, and then, oh my God, his post-fight speech, I know I'm going on a little rant, just running it down. His post-fight speech, hilarious, not gonna cuss, but fuck y'all, fuck you, like, fuck Izzy, like, whoa, what do you fuck me for? Like, just and really funny stuff. But Manel Cap clearly loves Israel Adesanya, and that's all there is to it, I guess.
I guess, yeah, he was hilarious on the mic. I do have that in the notes. But to run this down a little bit myself here, I would say that if Silva was fighting a little bit cautiously, it probably was because he was a little bit thrown off by this vintage Manel performance in the sense that he came out overconfident, unorthodox, and awkward, but somehow made it work. That is, I think, to a T how I would describe Manel Cop in general. Like when he is in the zone, if he's in his version of the flow state, that's what it is. It's weird showboating at times. It's showboating that's almost like theatrical. Like, I mean, that one point where he was like kneeling down and like doing
Yeah,
that drag across the ground thing. It's like, bro, yeah, you're really, really like playing with fire, man.
he's
But
just emoting. He's on the Fortnite generation. He
brother,
knows.
he is, yeah, for real, emoting in a legitimate way. Yeah, he's a winner chicken dinner out there with that shit. But so when it came to the fouls, though, like we had both touched on that a little bit, that first foul from Silva to Cop seemed like it did look like a little bit of a glancing shot based on what you were talking about with the angles and all that. I don't know if it's necessarily because he's wearing a super huge cup. That's not something that I picked up on, but it very well could be the case. But the second one, good Lord, man, Manil looked stiff coming back into the fight. Don't know why he didn't take more time to let himself recover, but the commentary had said that he might have been playing possum a little bit with that, and I think that after the next one, the third of this fucking cavalcade of fouls that he took, that might have been the case there because he really reacted to that one, but and also looked pretty stiff coming back into it, but he snapped right back into it thereafter. So it could have been a little bit of gamesmanship, which Manel Cop, I think that's just something that fighters need to watch out from with him, is that he is going to be the showboaty guy and he is going to game the system as well. Like he's just, he's a character, man. I mean, there's really no other way to describe this guy. But that's all aside. Let me at least talk a little bit about his actual fighting, because I thought that he did show some really good awareness when it came to the way that he was reacting to what Silva was putting out there. There was one sequence in particular where he catches Silva. I think he caught a kick, or he might have just got him with the hands. I don't remember how it all started, but it was he caught him, showboats, and then Silva goes for a spinning attack. Cop locks in on that, sees everything from a mile away, and then lays on an extremely nice combination thereafter. That was right before he ended up getting kicked in the nuts for the third time where the point deduction happened.
Yeah, I remember that from Bruno Silva. I don't know if there was that one specifically, but I do remember him doing a double spin. Like he spun, missed the attack, did a 360 for no reason. Just fuck it, why not?
Well, that's why I think that I think he was probably trying to mirror a little bit of the craziness that Cop was putting out there, which probably was not the greatest game plan. Obviously, it did not win him the fight and ended up getting him with a point deduction. But yeah, I mean, that second shot was the third rather was the one where the deduction did end up happening. As I had said, he looked pretty bad coming off of that, came back into it pretty well. Silva still heavy in the third round. Cops still locked in the third round. So I thought that at least the cardio, obviously these guys fighting at flyweight, you want to see that. I thought it was still there for both of them. And that weird intensity that both of them were putting out with this unorthodox stuff they were doing was certainly entertaining to watch. Definitely in real time. It was quite a spectacle, but I guess we do have to touch on that low blow from Cop in the finishing sequence. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, you said, he got what he got, after throwing the illegal strikes himself, getting the point deducted. That did happen, right? I went to the bathroom at one point of this. There was a
Oh yeah,
point.
yeah, yes, yeah.
Okay.
There was a point deduction.
So you got what you got, and that's just how the cookie crumbles sometimes. I know that may not be what you wanted, and he can contest all he wants, but that's just the fight game sometimes. And Manel Cap, I want to make a point that I think part of his game, and we see this sometimes, but he's got to get in your head type of deal to get over. I think everybody around him in the division, at least looking up, I just don't see them getting very distracted by him. Like I think they're just going to look at him and just continue on. Like if the KKF rematch, not rematch, but if they ever fight, um, I think KKF should be able to just stick to the game plan. Same thing with like Pantoja. Like he caught out Pantoja, but dude, Pantoja's not going to worry about you doing emotes. Like he's just going to fuck you over.
Yeah,
So
I do agree with that. The showboating and the gamesmanship, it's only going to get you so far. I mean, and look, for all of the craziness that happened with the Mokaev lead up and fight itself, whatever, he did end up losing that fight. I mean, some people thought that it was not the right decision, but I think more of the point is that he's not bulletproof. You know what I mean? Like based on all of this stuff, that whole long conversation that he was having with Dana, where Dana basically had to tell him, like, look, yeah, I'll come back and talk to you. Get out there and finish the fucking stuff
yeah,
that you have to do. Like, stop talking to me right now. It's like, I think that all kind of like leads into the same basic idea. It's that, it's, you're not like infallible here when it comes to what you're actually pulling off in the cage. And if you're going to get to the highest level, you can talk your way into it perhaps, but there are guys waiting at the top that aren't going to give a fuck about any of that shit.
yeah. I think after this they should do the KKF match,
I agree.
and I think that would be really fun. And I really hope a lot of people like Manel, and I don't dislike him. Like you said, he is a character, and the skill sometimes does look like it backs it up. But I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of good people in this division. This is going to be interesting.
For sure, most definitely. Yeah, and I would class myself in that camp. I like Manel for the unpredictability of him. I guess I do find him to, again, spectacle is the way that I look at him. It's like you really never know what you're going to get with him, which is keeps you on your toes. He's one of those guys that's like a hothead as well. So like it's entertaining for that aspect of it. Kind of goes a little bit over the line at times that you can I have a slight mixed feelings about that, but overall, I do enjoy watching him fight and all of the theatrics of it. But we are going to see how it plays out with some of these higher level guys, and I don't know if it's going to go great for him. The two last notes that I have, just because they were both funny, is at one point, based on the showboating, did Bisbing say on commentary that Manel was pimping Silva? I think he might have.
It is he must have been on a certain culture, heavy, because he earlier in the card said there was crackhead fight. It was like crackheads fighting with Sean Woodson and Padilla.
Well, he was referencing Eddie Bravo's like naming conventions, which is the whole Eddie Bravo system is its own kind of beast when it comes to that stuff. But I just thought that was a little funny note, and a note from being in the building. The "fuck you Silva" chants were pretty funny because those did start ringing out.
Oh, I didn't even hear that.
Oh
Damn.
yeah, fuck you Silva. Yeah,
Yeah, that's crazy.
that was certainly happening, and again, kind of warranted based on the way he was fighting. So just had to
Yeah.
throw those in there.
Yep. This was
All
a good
right.
one.
Yeah, for sure. And moving on to the co-main event of the evening, the fight that was, for me as a huge and longtime fan, worth the price of admission alone. This is Cub Swanson versus Billy Quarantillo. Why don't you start it off? Because I know that I'm going to have a lot to say here.
I think this is my second time watching Cub. I think this was the proper performance. And shout out Badger. He does love him some Cub Swanson, probably number 2 fan in the world behind Thinker. And this was just great. I will say that I noticed, and I didn't get to watch Cub the entire career, but I will say that he lacks a pocket striking ability. Like he doesn't have inside, like he can land them, but it's just not the best aspect of his game. He's good when he's at range. Like Badger said, also he's got like this drunken master style. Like he comes from a lot of unorthodox angles, but as you can see later on in the fight, it wears and it's effective. It's kind of funky, man. I don't know. Like some of the high kicks that he was throwing, like they were coming from some weird angles, and I could see that that's how you catch somebody off guard, and he would have caught somebody in a different time with that kind of deal. And I don't know, it was just a great performance. I'm glad that he didn't necessarily put a pin in retirement, but we'll see what happens from here. I'm glad I got to see that performance.
I was extremely glad I got to see that performance. That was it was electric in the building, is how I would describe it. But this fight was a nail biter for most of it, I would say. I mean, leading into it, it felt like at times that either guy could drop the other at any moment. After round one, I turned to my friend, and the way I described it is that this was a hamdinger of a fight, leading into what ended up being the eventual end here. Both guys were going for it in a very real way. This is actually one of the better Billy Q performances that I've ever seen. So, shout out to him for that. Billy Q is a guy that I do like a lot. He's always been kind of one of those dudes that's sort of a little bit of a middler. So I was a little bit, I guess not surprised is maybe not the right way to put it, but like this felt right that Cubs should be able to have done what he did here, but Billy really was going for it as well. So, I mean, this was a very competitive fight throughout the entire thing. And as you were talking about with Cub, the confidence that he has to keep his hands by his waist, basically, almost at all times, and still pull off what he did is really unreal. Because you're right. I mean, he's not going to go in there and really get into like crazy firefights in the pocket, like these super extended combinations where he's having to bob and weave, at like super close range. But he works with what he has so fucking well. The work that he did in the first round was really impressive, but Billy ended up turning it up towards the end of that first round. I mean, it was a seesaw of a fight was the way that I would describe it. So I'm trying to be pretty even about this. Like it was one of those kind of situations where Cub would land, then Billy would land after that, and it went back and forth. So I mean, it was a little bit of a tense one at times, but for Cub Swanson to land how he did and put him out, I really you saw the reel that I had posted about it. I was at a bit of a loss for words, just trying to put it all into sentences, how I felt in the moment as a longtime fan. Cub Swanson, also a person that I've seen fight twice in Florida, also a person that I've seen win twice in Florida, and it's been an honor both times. I'm a huge fan, and uh, as you kind of alluded to there, he didn't put the definitive stamp on retiring. Cub, this was a great performance. Please retire. This is go out on a big, nice, win. Not a lot of guys get this type of a retirement fight where they go out with a big win like this. In fact, had he done what Robbie Lawler did, he might have gotten the exact type of retirement Robbie Lawler had. And I was a little bit sad that he didn't do that, because that would have been very special to have witnessed in the moment, So the time is right, is what I'm trying to say.
Badger said the same thing. Honestly, I disagreed in the moment. I still kind of do. I'm like, yo, why not one more? I mean, come on now. That was all right. That was good enough. I mean, shit, you can give another can to him. He's not going to be fighting no ranked opponents. Like, you can find somebody.
I mean, I'm not going to be mad at it if he wants to. I'm just saying that if there's any potential for him to lose a fight, if it, if it's a complete can crusher situation, then fair, whatever. He wants to rack up one more win. He wants to get a
Tony
little bit.
Ferguson.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Oh, sorry. No, this is featherweight. My bad.
I mean, either way, I don't care what weight it is. That name should never be should never be entered into the conversation at this point. But no, look, if that's what it ends up being, I'm not going to be mad at it. Go get the bag, whatever. You just want one more taste of it. I can understand all of that aspect of it, but like I said, not every guy that I consider a legend gets to go out on such an explosive win. I'm like, dude, the pop in the building that he got off of that knockout in enemy territory. Billy Q is from Tampa. I mean, like, they were saying on the commentary, he lives just a couple of minutes from the arena. So it's like talking about fighting in his backyard. That's actually something too to note. I didn't even think to bring this up, but I will say it here. Billy Q is so local that this is one of the few fights that I actually did like queue up on the railing for, so that I could, Cub wasn't dapping anybody up, but I did want to be over there to give him a little bit of support, because he didn't have a lot in the building, being that Billy Q is local. I was standing right next to a couple of guys who I guess were, either relatives or just people that were close to Billy Quarantilla, because he ended up coming over and giving hugs to those guys. So I mean, talk about being local. Billy Q is about as local as it gets. So I mean, Cub getting as big of a reaction as he got off of that knockout in the building, after a long and hard fought career like he has had, take the dub and be happy, my man, is really what my gut would be saying. So anyway,
The one thing I'll know, or last thing, is that the knockout, the way Billy's arms went flailing it was just great. It was just cartoonish, really, and that was what's great about some knockouts. Sometimes it's like, man, he really fucked him up. Like, damn.
and
So
after taking a good amount of damage himself, as I had said, man, I mean, like, especially in the moment seeing it there, it really was like, ooh, this really could go either way. So it was really impressive to see after a very hard fought war, Cub Swanson getting the job done. Like it did my heart good. I was very, very happy with this.
yeah, 100%.
And of course, very happy with this, while a lot of people were not very happy with how the main event concluded. So I guess we should get into that. It is Colby Covington versus Joaquin Buckley. I guess before we get into the fight itself, we probably should at least touch on the absolute fucking crickets that were walked out to when Colby had his big surprise unveiled to the world, walking out with Hulk Hogan. I don't think anybody could have given less of a fuck about this. Did anybody care?
No, honestly, people might have even asked, who's that guy? Like that, we're at that point in the, in the time that like Hulk Hogan, like we all know he's racist. Like who really cares anymore? But so the thing that I will note about it is that Dana White did not like he had like Medusa, if you make eye contact, you turn to stone. Like Dana White, when the camera was panning by him when Kobe was walking out, like he's just dead, like looking at the wall. Like he did not want to give him the time of day, because it was and exactly why is like Kobe. If we're gonna get into it already, I think one, after we saw the cut, I knew, here we go, doctor stoppage coming soon. And two, yeah, unfortunately, it was a quick fight in my opinion, because after the cut, like I just stopped caring all of a sudden. Like I knew Buckley was going to walk away with a W.
Well, all right. If we're gonna go, jump to that portion of it, I did want to address this because Toby was asking, watching it live, did I think it was an early stoppage? Actually, no, I did not in the moment, and I'll tell you why. Because especially from the angle that I was watching from, the amount of blood that was, I mean, you could see it. Like what I would
There was
describe
a
as
pool of it that
a
had like
pile.
it was like the glint that you could tell, like it wasn't blood drying into the mat, like it was like puddles, like
Yeah,
it was
the way I thought of it was like a pile of blood, which is an odd thing to have to say. You know what I mean?
exactly
But so yeah, so the thing
fleshy
was,
blood,
right? Yeah, pulpy. Yeah, it was something for
bubbles
sure.
and shit in it. Like, come
Yeah,
on now,
yeah.
like
We're talking definitely gruesome. So that being said, where the angle that I was watching from, you could tell that you could tell that he was wearing the blood, and it was like very much at the distance, it really looked like it was covering the majority of his face. So what I thought in the moment was that it might have been more so because it was dripping down into his eye to the point that it was going to be not allowing him to see anymore. So from what we got based on the doctor when she had said, oh, he's going to lose his eyelid, that after the fact is, yeah, definitely not the case. But in the moment, I thought that it might have been bad enough that it was drooping down to the point that it was obstructing his vision. So to answer the question, in the moment, it didn't feel like an early stop, but after rewatching it on the replay, it was a little bit of an early stop, I would say.
yeah, so to be that guy, because nobody else will be, I think this is why we need to limit the women doctors coming in here. Is like she's freaking out, like, oh my god, he's gonna lose his eye. Like
you and the guru.
Listen, I do would have walked in there and have been like, are you good? Like you can see he's good. Send him on out there. But no, it was definitely a bad cut. Colby was making it worse because he kept fucking with it. Like Chase Hooper pointed out on Twitter, you're ruining everything the cut man just did in the corner, like by messing with it, pulling it. You're literally making the cut bigger. Like
that is true.
making it a more gruesome scene than it maybe needed to be. But there's also I don't know if we talked about it before. It's kind of hard to explain. Certain cuts you can see there's like a certain glint to them that you can tell like, oh, it's deep, like it's where a bad spot to be. I don't know. So like at the beginning of the fight when that cut happened, you could just see like there's a little twinkle and it's like there it is. Like I don't know. It felt like a game quick time event. It's like, well, hit him right there. Like there you go.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I would not say that it has necessarily to do with the sex or gender of the person, but what I will say is that you do need doctors who are aware of what they're looking at when it comes to the sport of MMA. Like there have to be doctors that are well versed in what this sport is and how it operates and what the reality of the injury is as opposed to the perception of the injury. That's how I would describe it. Because when she's saying that, yeah, he might lose the eyelid, there really was no jeopardy of that in my estimation. And I did think that it was kind of funny. People were saying that, meanwhile at Noche, they're allowing Irene Aldana to fight with, a river going down her forehead, which was absolutely, that one should have been stopped in
Yeah.
my opinion.
Well, in my opinion, I think she made the right call. Whether she said eyelid, she probably meant eye. And like, I do think that's a little dangerous. That is a big cut on the actual eyelid. His eye could be in jeopardy. So I think like I felt the doctor would stop it. I don't know if I look at him like, cause Colby was fighting, like, he was wiping it and it was bothering him, but like, what doesn't kind of deal. So
Yeah, I
I
mean,
don't know.
I think what would have been more appropriate, and I do think that this also goes to my point about the doctor having to be experienced with this sport, is that if Mergliata was going to call the doctor in, then obviously he thought that there was something there to be examined. What I would have liked to have seen was the doctor wipe it off, which was, I think, that was a big tell to me. Mergliata had to say, like, are you want to wipe it off and then look at it? You know what I mean? Like, so it was like, obviously this doctor was a little bit inexperienced. What I would have liked to have seen was the doctor wipe it off, say, look, I'll let this go on for a little bit more, but if you take any more damage to that eye, then I'm going to stop
Well,
it. And then
they
it would
did
have
say
been,
that.
no, no.
Yeah, Dan said that. No, he
Well, he
definitely
no,
said
no, no. Dan said it himself, but that was before he brought the doctor in.
true, but he told Colby like, listen, the doctor already like because it was before that the
You're
doctor
talking
like
about
looked
between
at it.
rounds.
Yes, but between rounds, I'm pretty sure the doctor looked at it in the second round, and then they let it go. And then Dan at the beginning, he said, "Look, you have to protect that eye. If you don't, like it's gonna get like I'm gonna bring the doctor in again." And went the whole round, and at the end of it, he decided to let the doctor step in.
Well, I mean, then okay, then I mean, maybe I do think that it's a better stoppage than I thought initially. If that's how it all played out.
Yeah, I actually thought it was a very good moment. I thought like we need to see that more. Like he's audibly saying, if you don't change something, it's going to end. And Kobe's mad, but he didn't listen. So
Well, and all right, so let's let that jump us into the actual fight itself here a little bit because one thing that I noticed in the moment, and it didn't really seem like it translated like 100% on screen, but I know, I turned to my friend even after round one, and I was like, Colby looks insanely slow. Like that just seemed I mean, and granted, of course, Buckley is fast, so I mean, the contrast alone would give you that perception. But the shots from Colby were sloppy to me. Buckley was easily stuffing most of it. I mean, credit to Colby that he was like the first person to be able to really like control Buckley on the ground for a prolonged period of time.
with
So
his
like,
one
yeah,
takedown.
with his one takedown, exactly. I mean, but even that Buckley was able to negate. So I mean, you know, like Buckley was just doing everything right with this fight, and Colby was really showing like I don't want to say showing his age, but just showing that he like what I was saying earlier about people who can reach that like elite level, but not the of the top of the food chain. You know what I mean? Like he's just one of those dudes that has grazed greatness, but he has never achieved it, and that is starting to the cracks are continuing to show, which have already been opened up earlier in his career. So
I think this was short notice, so take that into account with
it's a good point.
the speed that he had,
Yeah, I'll give
because
you that.
I think to point out his striking looked like poop. So there was that, and it always will, it always has. But to pair that with his wrestling getting stuffed and him not being able to do anything with that, it looked really bad. Colby looked at a disadvantage. And whether you want to believe that he was, turning it up, and if Henry Cejudo had it 1-1, I know I saw that a little bit ago from Toby, sorry. And then, but I do believe it was maybe an unfortunate cut because it happened really early and it wasn't really off anything major. So I think it's unfortunate. Colby might have been coming around to getting some success. Buckley might have been gassing out, but from what I was seeing, Buckley was going to win that fight in 5 rounds without a cut. So
That's an interesting element to this too. I'm glad you mentioned that it wasn't off of anything like super major. Were they back to the old gloves in this event?
yeah,
Because they were, right.
no, it's 100% old gloves now, I think.
And so I think that might have been because this was a note about the old gloves. One of the things that they had said when they were transitioning to the new design was that one of the key elements of the new design was to eliminate people getting cuts from the gloves. I think it might have been that. Like, I don't even know if it actually was from a strike. If I think it might have been a glove graze that ended up actually doing the opening. Of course, thereafter it was a lot of striking that made it the cut that it would become. But the initial cut, because like they showed the replay of it, and you're right, it really was not much of anything. So I mean, again, speculation on that, but that just was what my gut kind of was saying after like seeing what it ended up becoming. That might have been the case, but yeah, I mean, so that's all on Colby's side of the equation. I would like to say that, I mean, Buckley's striking really is like at this point, like pretty next level. Like he's just really, really nice with his hands and he is very fast. So, the way that he moves paired with his striking just is very formidable against a lot of guys. Will he end up being one of those elite guys? I think that it's a little bit hard to say that I have like full confidence in that, but I do want to give him his credit where credit is due.
Yeah, and to what Toby just said,
I
Kobe
saw
landed
that.
a
Yeah.
tornado kick. Yeah, he thought he was me. His striking is not good. The only thing that he did that looked quality was that kick. Surprised it landed. Like it was a good one, but it didn't do anything. Buckley just ate it and moved on. And
Yeah.
and I think that was going to be the story of the entire fight. Kobe, because in my opinion, Kobe came in this fight and he looked a lot bigger than Buckley. Like at least height wise. I know Buckley's, massive like muscle definition, but I thought Colby was gonna have a good size advantage and use it to his advantage, but Buckley stuffed those takedowns and Colby looked real like I think Toby also Colby failed the takedowns and looked deflated was a good word. Early on, he just did not look like he had what he needed.
Yeah, deflated is actually a really, really good word for it because that's how it felt in the moment as well. Like it was just like he took a couple of shots that I guess might have caught him off guard, and then it was just like again the shot early that the first time that he went for the takedown was just a slop. And it was easily negated. And I mean, like Buckley was just really locked in. So it was one of those situations because I agree. I go on the drive up to the show. Me and my friend were talking about it, and that's what I had said to him. I was like, my only hope is that Colby doesn't tie him up against the cage and make this a really boring decision. That he's just going to be able to control for a good amount of time and all that. It was nice to see that was not the case. Uh, and it really comes off of Buckley. So, I mean, I like we're talking a whole lot about Colby's side of the equation. I think that Buckley deserves a lot of credit for how he fought in this. And of course, the big note as well that has not been said is that for all of the talk of whether or not it was a good stoppage, all of it came from the work of Joaquin Buckley. So whether it, was the ending that you wanted or not, it was still based on his work. So, fine to me.
Yeah, and I actually want to ask the chat what they thought too, about Buckley's post-fight speech because me personally, I don't know why everybody was ranting and raving about that. Like I was sitting here watching it kind of bored. Like it didn't feel like it was captivating me at the time. I don't know. Maybe you were in the crowd. Maybe you felt different, but like it didn't do it for me.
I mean, I people were like already halfway home by the time that he finally got to the pick your own adventure element of it.
Yeah, true. Yeah, that was yeah.
Because yeah, I mean, like yeah, he was saying, "Oh, it sucks that everybody's leaving," and I was like, "Yeah, well, everybody is leaving." I was already like, I had gone down to the front so that I could like catch anybody that was walking by, hand out some cards and
Yeah, did
stuff
you
or
see
whatever.
Colby slink out did he? We didn't catch him on the broadcast. Like we couldn't see him at all. We saw him kind of fiddling with his gloves, and then he like slunk out.
I
So
believe that he exited through because he entered through where they were exiting through. Like normally that was the flow, was that they would enter through my side and exit through the other side. He entered through the other side and I believe exited through that side as well. I think both of them
gotcha.
did.
Yeah.
But I didn't see him dip. But I did see Kamaru Usman get the motherfuck out of there because he didn't stay around for any of that. He was gone like halfway through the speech as well. So when he's asking who did the crowd think that he should fight, Buckley, that is, and everybody was kind of cheering for Kamaru Usman, he was nowhere to be found in that equation. So
Yeah, like Badger just said, he called out people that have already been confirmed, so it's whatever.
yeah, it really was whatever. I don't know. People were saying something about it or had an opinion about it. It certainly.
They Twitter was going crazy, like, oh man, Buckley, he really got me going with that post fight speech. I think I saw it in the Discord a little bit too, but
Yeah. So, I mean, it really wasn't anything like overly inspiring in that regard. I appreciate Buckley trying to like turn around his perception with the fans a little bit because I guess he might have lost a little bit of ground with some of the stuff that he said in the past. But
Conor McGregor call out.
yeah, that and the whole thing about him in DC, your mama raised some hoes and all that
Yeah,
stuff. I mean, to me, it's all a little bit of fluff. Like I don't really like see it as like super negative as some people might, but whatever. I mean, like look, it came after a really nice win for him, so I'm glad that he got a little bit of time on the mic and. We'll see what they end up doing with him now. I mean, I think that he deserves to continue rising up. It's just welterweight is really on fire right now, especially after the fight at 310 with Gary and Shavkat. So obviously there's a good amount going on in that division.
yeah, 100%. It's going to be interesting to see what's next for a lot of people.
Yeah. So before I ask you what your overall perception of this event was, I got to give a huge shout out to the homie Jack Director. Jack, much love to you, my guy. But that being said, what was your overall perception after us talking through it all?
To end the year of UFC, I'm very grateful that we had a lot of finishes. And credit to the old gloves is that if that's really what's going down, I still believe that they could tweak the promotion a little bit because they get a little long. And this is coming from the blue collar because like these last couple cards I've been working before like I get on and watch it. So like I get up at 5, work at 7, get off around 2, and then I come home, I take a little 30-minute nap, and then I gotta, I'm watching the card or whatever, hang out for a few. But I'm going off steam from the morning, and like these 7 hours getting to 2 a.m. What listening to Buckley, it's like we gotta, I don't know, we gotta just figure out how to get the pacing a little bit. And I'm not trying to control everybody. Listen, I'm a new viewer. This is how you guys have been doing it forever. If you guys love it, I'll get on board. But I think just like 30 minutes, just cut out 30 minutes and make stuff go a little quicker. I think it'll be good for them.
Fair enough. I mean, yeah, the drive back was quite the expedition. Like you were saying, we got out of the venue, I think, probably around 1:30 ish, something like that. And yeah, I mean, getting home, I think I finally hit the pillow to end the evening around 5 in the morning. So it was a long night. It was a very a long journey for this one, but yeah, no. Overall perception was pretty good. I mean, there was some stuff I had mentioned with being in the spot that we chose to sit. I would recommend that if you're going to go to a live event and you have the money to do so, go lower bowl a little bit higher up so that you can see over the side of the cage. Like where you enter the lower bowl, that's a good place to get your seats. Like if you're closer to like the actual like entryway to those sections, then you'll get a good unobstructed view of the fight and not have as much commotion as I had to deal with. But other than that, really good time, really good, solid event to close this year out, I thought. And of course, getting to see things like Cub Swanson getting that crazy knockout really made everything come together in a big way for me. So good one. Yeah, a lot of fun. A lot of fun out in Tampa. So
Yeah, 100%. I'm really glad that you got to go get the the in-person experience that I think that brings a good aspect to the show, because a lot of things, like you said, like the power flickering or whatever, and then the broadcast at home, these are things that we had two different viewpoints on, so it was good to know.
Yeah, absolutely, and I will try to do so as many times as I can. We can't afford because goddamn, these ticket prices are going insane. But
Yeah.
yeah, so that is UFC Fight Night, Covington versus Buckley. We got one other thing we wanted to talk about tonight because it is somewhat recent news. But Chase, actually, before we get to this GFL thing, there was something before the stream started that you wanted to mention, and you didn't tell me what it was. So I wanted to give you some time to get that out there, whatever this mystery thing is.
So if you go to ESPN and you go to 2025, right there. No, yep,
Oh,
just down a little bit over,
oh yes, to 2025.
and then go to the event and then go to the first one.
Okay.
You got a headline of Mackenzie Dern and Amanda Rebus.
That the fight that got taken off of the Tampa card.
And then under that, you have Roman Kopylov versus Chris Curtis.
Ah, well then, that's interesting. I mean, are you super mad about that? What's the big
I
deal?
know. I just think that is interesting to note that I don't believe that they told us Mackenzie Dern and Rebus was going to be the headline of the first card of the year. I thought there was a different fight that this was going to be for some reason. And two, I don't think we ever knew Chris Curtis and Roman Kopylov were going to fight, but I do really like both of them. So it sucks that, there has to be a loser. And I don't know. I think that just caught me off guard seeing that as the co-main and the main event.
Oh no, I mean, I think that they had announced that the Dern fight was going to be the main event. That's why they had pulled it off this card, was to make it a main event of an Apex card. I believe that that's what that is.
Word. Well,
So
Chris Curtis and Roman Kopylov. That's a good one for me.
yeah, well, so there you go. I mean, yeah, this is I mean, I guess we have a couple of weeks off from fights coming up, right? I think we have 2 weeks in a row of no fights leading into the new year, if I'm not mistaken. This is, yeah, July 11th. So we got a little bit of time. So we won't necessarily go through the full rundown of this card today. We'll save that for a future Monday here. But there's your little preview is that, yeah, Mackenzie Dern and Amanda Hebus and Chris Curtis and Roman Kopylov as the co-main of that one. So yeah, that is what it is there. Let's get into this GFL thing though, because that is the
Yeah.
other big point of the evening.
Yeah,
So
what's their website? Global Fight League? Like I just typed in GFL and it came up some planetary
it is
environmental group.
it is MMAGFL.com, and I got that. Whoa, sorry, I thought I had it right here, but yeah, let me get that up here. There we go. All right, so.
Okay.
So the GFL, if you are not familiar, is a new organization that has recently been announced to the world. It's actually interesting because I had heard rumblings of this organization years ago. It is something that had been rumored for a while that there was going to be a new fight league and it was going to be one that was team based and was going to give a lot more of the fighters. I was going to give a lot more of the profits from the events to the fighters. That was their big selling point to fighters was that you come over here and fight for us, and you're going to get a better deal than you're going to get anywhere else. Is what they, at least how they sold it back then. And we're talking like a number of years ago now. I want to say something like maybe 2019 or something like that is what I'm talking about here. So like this is going back quite a ways. Now that is way before the Bellator PFL merger. That's before the involvement of a lot of new Saudi Arabian money and money from that area of the world came into the equation. So whether or not they are going to be able to compete that way does somewhat remain to be seen, but this is now what we have. And of course, if you're a listener of the podcast for a while, you know that Chase and I have been covering the happenings in some of these other organizations, primarily PFL and One Championship, which have had their own issues recently with fighters not being super satisfied with how things have been going for them in those organizations. Now you have a third contender in the arena here. So I just wanted to run down a little bit of what this organization entails. It is a season structure similar to the PFL. It is a bracketed situation, and fighters are fighting on teams. So I don't know how that part of it works out, but you can see here it's these cities have these are I would assume events, and these, I guess it's bracketed this way per division, I would assume.
Okay. One thing I want to know is that I'm looking through the current roster right now. That's the first thing that I'm doing.
Yeah, I
There's
have the roster as well, which we can go over too in depth if you want to go to that now.
Yeah, I mean, there's not really much more for me to say. I mean, I don't know what
Well, okay,
exactly this is gonna be.
then put a pin in it just real
Okay,
quick,
okay,
because
yeah, go ahead.
I did want to just go over a couple more pieces of this. So
Yeah, 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 yeah.
similar to PFL, it is a point based situation. So they got this 4 points for a finish, 3 for a decision, 2 for a draw, 1 for a decision loss, and none for a finish loss. These are things that I think are going to be a detriment, as we have said about the PFL. People do not give a fuck to keep up with this shit. So this is going to be something that is going to be a little bit strange, but you can see Benson Henderson right here, one of the fighters that they had signed. And this is the other part that I wanted to get to, the 50-50 revenue share. So fighters earn a fair share of the revenue generated from events, ensuring their success is directly linked to the league's success. This is what they had touted as one of their big selling points, like I had mentioned. They're also talking about comprehensive support as far as training resources, medical assistance, promotional support, and enhancing their careers. They're talking about retirement benefits. This is a huge thing that is a difference from the UFC. That's one of the major criticisms that have been levied against the UFC in the past. That was a big part of the class action lawsuit that is still apparently in some way, shape, or form still going on. So, don't think that I've forgotten about that at all. But so retirement benefits, insurance coverage, another massive thing that is a criticism of the UFC. They're not being insurance for these guys. Global exposure and a fight-centric model. I don't really, that remains to be seen. But those are the real core tenets that they're trying to set this thing apart. And within this bracketed tournament system, not tournaments, a bracketed season system with fighters being on teams. So anyway,
Fix your
that's
camera.
oh, sorry. This cat is driving me wild tonight. Sorry. So anyway, okay, so that's that is when it comes to the actual organization of the sport, that's some of the benefits of it, some of the structural aspects. Now, Chase, if you want to go into the roster, I have that on screen now as well.
Well, yeah, they actually have it on. If you go to the website, you can click the little
Yeah,
fighters.
I didn't want to do that only
Oh,
because
okay,
they
okay. You have to scroll and
yeah,
stuff.
well, it's because they have it broken down by division, so it's I have to go through each of them that way. The one that they had released kind of does have more of
Yeah.
their highlighted ones. So if you are interested out there, anybody listening, if you want to see in depth, they have a more expanded roster here. But yeah, Rebellis.
Damn, you ruined what I was about to talk about. That's what
Oh,
I was
sorry.
saying. Yeah, okay. So my
Go
point
for
is,
it. Sorry.
I'm looking at the fighters, and there are some big names here of obviously retired and ex people. Like you go up in here and you look at Alexei Olenek, this dude I watched fight, and he had like 50 fights in like 2015 or something like that. So the fact this dude's willing to step up and do it again, first off, love of the game. Shout out him. He's a beast. And then you scroll down the list and you see a lot of people, Greg Hardy, like, and then you see Robelis to Spain. It's like, what? Wait a minute. I thought this was the retired people club. Like, you're gonna give the dude who's physically in his prime, like you're gonna feed him to Frank Mir. I mean, obviously Frank Mir would probably maul him on the ground or something. I don't know. Listen, this
Well,
is a weird league. And sorry, I'll
no,
let
yeah, go.
you
Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
when you go through the list, you start to see how top loaded this company is. So look at the light heavyweight. Okay, you got one notable light heavyweight, basically, at least in my opinion. I don't know. You might know these guys a little better. Um, and then you go to middleweight, and it's like you start seeing less and less. Okay, you have Vanderlei, Philip Rowe, Luke Rockhold, Kyle Dukakis. Then you keep going, and it's like you start seeing less and less of people that you know when you start really breaking it down. So I think that's going to be, the GFL. When you look at who's going to watch this, it's going to be like, oh my God, the people who want to see these guys give it one last go. Nobody's going to come here to see Charles Rosa give it one last go. Like, I don't know. That's just my opinion.
So yeah, I mean, there are a good amount of guys from the past. There's a couple that are interesting here. So I mean, if we go back to middleweight, you see that Gegard Mousasi is a dude who's over here. He is a person who's been very vocal about PFL not giving him fights. Um, let's go. Let me go over to that list version of it real quick, though, because I think
Have
that
you
this. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
have you heard of the Big Three League? Do you know what that is?
In basketball.
In basketball, what Ice Cube owns. It is
Uh, yeah. So go ahead.
it's basically like a retired players league. They play in half court and it's 3-on-3 up until like a certain score limit. That's what this is giving me like vibes of. It's like, okay, give the retirement player, give them something to do in their free time, like kind of deal.
Well, yeah, I mean, so I think that that's kind of one of the takeaways in the general with this is that this does kind of smack of being just PFL 2.0. That's basically what I had put on Twitter. I mean,
No,
you're
I feel like this is more celebrity MMA.
well, yeah, I mean,
Style,
they did
yeah.
bring back a lot of guys, so I guess you can say that's an aspect of it. But PFL does have a little bit of that. Bellator has had a little bit of that as well. So I mean, if you count Bellator slash PFL as one entity, I think that that kind of makes it a little bit more of a 1-to-1. But um, yeah, I mean, I think that with this, an opportunity for a lot of these guys who were dissatisfied elsewhere, or people who uh, have not fought for a while and maybe still want to be able to still go out there and fight the way that they would like to. There are a couple of names that are interesting to see in here. There are a couple of names that are very surprising to see in here. The name that surprised me the most is that Husamar Palhares is in this league. That is insane to me that anyone is allowing him to fight anywhere, because that is one of the most dangerous people on the planet, as far as like legitimate, like this dude. You talk about a person who does has like no uh, uh, consideration for the rules of this sport. I mean, he's legitimately injured people in significant ways, not letting go of submissions that he's had in the past. Like, this guy is notorious for that. So kind of crazy to see a name like that on here, but it is just such a mixed bag. And I see the chat, going with some of these names. I mean, we're talking fucking Andrei Arlovsky, who we were just talking about on there, Frank Mir, who came up. Yair Latifi, Tyron Woodley, former champion in the UFC
I
on there. I mean,
I
there's just
think
a lot of weird ones.
I think what's also to note, and I think maybe I broke it down in my head a little bit. So when you look at, professional leagues, right? It's like you have a gap from like 20-year-olds, to maybe 40-year-olds. Well, with the GFL, it's like, okay, you maybe have the gap from like late 30-year-olds to maybe 50, 60-year-olds. How old is Frank Mir? Like,
Oh yeah,
uh,
I mean, Mir's got to be in his mid 40s by now, right? Like,
yeah, like I mean, and Andrei Arlovsky, like he's not old as can be, but it's like Alexei Olenek is probably 50. Like, let me look. Hold on, I gotta look that up.
yeah, while you do that, I mean, I think that with this, it is a little bit strange. I mean, I would assume that they're giving these guys
He's
like crazy.
47.
Yeah,
Sorry.
47 years old. Sure. I mean, plays right into it. But I mean, I got to believe that they're giving these guys some pretty goddamn good deals. And maybe that is part of the appeal of it, is that it's like, well, if you're going over here getting an amazing deal and your level of competition is going to be somewhat in the same range that you're at, then, it is another option for these guys, perhaps. I think that the biggest detriment to it, aside from that element of it, is going to be this point-based system that no one is going to care about and no one is going to follow. But some of these matchups might be interesting to some people.
I think you even take it a step lower. I think you're thinking people actually take these fights seriously and like, yes, care about a score system, but I think most of these might just be exhibition feeling type. Like, these aren't going to be dudes trying to take each other's heads off. Like, they're just gonna, throw some little punt, like Shale and Anderson Silva when they did the little boxing match. It wasn't actually them fighting. Like, it was just them having fun with each other. So that might be, you know, Andrei Arlovsky and Frank Mir. Why not just go out there and have a good time? Like, I don't know. So I don't think the scoring system is going to be relevant because I don't think these are going to be competitive matchups kind of deal, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, that is certainly a thing that has potential to be the truth. Yeah, I guess we're really going to have to see what the full-on version of the roster looks like, because I mean they have announced a lot of people. I mean this list right here has to be like 30, 35 names long here, something like that.
Who runs it? Where's the money? Is it a Saudi? I must know.
No, that so that's an interesting element of it as well. I would do have this clip here if you want. I can play
Darren
this.
Owens
Yes,
joins the program.
Yeah, Darren Owens is the guy. He's the CEO here.
Gotcha.
He is a former PFL COO, and he was the founder of the World Series of Fighting, which of course the PFL came out of. That's what PFL
Gotcha.
became.
So he
Or
knows
could,
how to start shitty businesses and dip. Okay.
I mean, he's a guy who has some experience in the game, I guess, to put it
Shark
politely.
Tank
But
kind of guy. Sell an idea, you know?
yeah, so I mean, let's hear what he has to say here. We can pause this and kind of give our analysis. But
Go
let's see
ahead.
here. He's Sim on Aerial
So we're
Hawaii.
launching 6 global teams, 4 different continents, and we're launching our proof of concept season starting in April. We have multiple venues booked in multiple different cities around the world. We're embracing our flexibility to begin with and doing that 50-50 revenue share, the team versus team, proof of concept season, and it's finally lined up. We have 300 fighters signed as of right now. Our draft is January 24th.
Yeah, I was going to say that's 300 fighters is a decent sized roster.
So I want to make a point that he's talking about that this is going to be teams, like
Right.
and now I'm thinking like this. Okay, this seems like it sounds like NASCAR. How that NASCAR have teams? I know that's a different realm, but what I'm thinking their loophole is going to be, because like 50-50 fighter revenue kind of sounds. Why haven't you done it before if it's just that easy? I feel like they're going to pay the team 50% of the revenue on the event or whatever, not per fighter, if that makes sense. And that's just the way that it sounds to me. Why have the teams in that? Like, I don't know. That just sounds a little weird. You can go back to it. Sorry. Or if you have something.
No, yeah. The other thing I did want to mention is I'm interested to see how the team aspect of it works. Like, how are they assigning these teams? Are these teams picked by the fighters, or are they assigned by the organization? What does the team aspect even really mean? Like, are we talking about points when it comes to the teams themselves accrue the points, or is it per fighter? How does that aspect of it play in? I think that he's saying that this is a proof of concept season. I'm interested to see how the actual concept plays out in real time, because there are just some questions that I think are still open. Maybe they'll get addressed here. So
we actually talked about how are the teams going to be picked. So January 24th. There's a draft, however that works.
Right, even with that. So, okay, with the draft. So, I mean, like, who's doing the drafting? I mean, like,
Yeah.
Are there team captains? Maybe that's what it is, you know?
I'm trying to think. I know, so look at it says city 1 to 6. I know, again, branching to another sport, the NBA draft. They just have like random people go, like it could be like the owner, or it could be like, the next star up. Like he'll just go to the draft and they'll just pick a guard for him. Like,
but where is but like in that case, that those are established teams. These are like new, like there's no entity. So how is the team even defined? You know what I'm saying?
For the first one, they might just do team captains.
Yeah, it could be. Well, let's keep on going.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
He'll say some more here.
4th. On those 6 teams, there's 20 athletes per each roster, so we'll sign 120 of the actual fighters that have signed, and then we'll get underway with events in April.
Okay, so there's a lot there. Can I ask, where are the 6, when you say teams, if you can specify what that is and where are they located?
So we're not announcing the teams yet. We're going to announce the teams, the names, and the logos early in the new year.
Okay.
We have like 10 different cities booked. So what's kind of been happening is we announced some of the fighters and managers, some of the locations. We are kind of being counter-programmed venue-wise. So we're kind of just keeping everything quiet until our whole season is locked in and ready to be announced.
All right, so keeping it kind of close to the chest doesn't really get into too much of what we were just talking about, but I guess they have some plan.
I mean, listen, everything sounds good up until you get the actual product. He's talking about proof of concept. I've seen a lot of rough drafts. If this is going to be the rough draft season, like you're not going to get what you're expecting out of it. Like you're going to get the people who just kind of peruse the the promotion. And now if you came out and said like, oh yeah, we're ready to go day one, we're ready to, like, I wouldn't believe you necessarily, but at least you have some confidence. Like you can at least lie to me that there's going to be a great product coming, not just proof of concept kind of deal.
Yeah,
Because we could see it and be like, yeah, it's got to go back to the drawing board, like kind of deal. It may not work, that kind of deal.
Yeah, no, you're definitely right. I'm also interested to see what these logos look like. Of course, we've been
and I think
stuff
that's
that way.
another thing that I wanted to touch on is like back to the NBA thing. It's like you can represent an NBA team longer than you can represent a fighter, and than a player, excuse me, in that sense. So I think it's a cool concept. It's like instead of representing that particular fighter, you're representing a club, but they already have MMA clubs, kind of deal. So like you could represent them. You just got to know which ones they are.
And
So I don't know.
to that point, also this does kind of add an element that's somewhat interesting in the sense that MMA being such a singular sport, as far as you versus one other person, it's a solo sport. I wonder how all of these fighters are going to conduct themselves being on a team in general. How are they even going to feel about that? Because for the longest time, now granted, a lot of these guys of course are later on in their careers, so it might just be a new thing that they'll be okay with and get on board with, just be happy to be getting a bag at all, maybe. But I know that is a lot of ego in this sport, so having to share any of the shine whatsoever might play somewhat of a factor. So just something to keep in mind, I guess.
Well, and to the team aspect, it's like, are there going to be singular rankings as well, or is one fighter going to go 3-0, and then his team's just going to be fucking at the bottom of the rankings because all of his teammates have lost their fucking fights? Like,
Yeah,
so
exactly. This is more questions than answers, and
I
I guess
mean,
we're not getting
as
too
it would
many.
even matter if a dude went 4-0, he's beat everybody in the fucking division, whatever.
Yeah, maybe his points will just equal out to him carrying the team. I guess I don't know. He'll be the LeBron of the whole thing. But all right, well let's finish out this clip and see
Yeah,
if
go
there's
ahead.
any other information.
Countered by who?
Just some of the venues that we had talked to or booked by other big promotions.
Okay.
So almost theoretically, we're kind of blocked out of some locations, so we didn't want to go out and announce where we're going.
Understood. How many fighters are on each team?
20.
20 fighters.
10 weight categories, 2 fighters per each weight category. So each team will have a set of teammates in each of the 10 weight categories. So 7 men's weight divisions, 3 women's weight divisions.
And so I'm assuming heavyweight, light heavyweight, middleweight, welterweight, lightweight, featherweight, bantamweight. So are we just staying at bantamweight? Okay.
Correct.
And then is it 115, 125, 135 for women?
No. So what we're doing, we really want to eliminate extreme weight cutting and obviously, tackle as many of the issues as we realistically can. So our weight divisions are not historically how they are. So like our bantamweight is 145, featherweight's 155. So everything kind of goes up by 10 pounds. Middleweight's 200, light heavyweight's 225.
Oh,
And then our 3 women's divisions, it's 120, 130, 140.
wow. And is that okay with the commissions? Like, because the unified rules of MMA kind of state that those should be the numbers, like 115, 125, 135.
Yeah, either we'll just do everything as a catch weight and we're just calling it the GFL weight categories are going to remain the historical weight categories. So if a fighter's been a welterweight their entire career, they'll be a GFL welterweight. However, they'll weigh in at 180 instead of 170.
A lot to take in there.
So keeping track of anything it's just not going to happen. Like, how are you going to know what fighter is fighting away? And I love how he's just like, well, will the commission allow it? And he's like, I mean, if they don't, I mean, we're just going to do it a catch weight anyways. Like, that's hilarious. Like, what the heck?
Well,
Why have weight classes?
Well, to his credit, though, I mean, he's bucking the system. I mean, he apparently just comfortable saying, throwing the book out the window and doing it his own way. So I guess there's something to be said about that cavalier attitude, because that's a lot of what the sport was created on in the first place. A whole lot of opposition and a whole lot of people saying you can't do something, and a lot of people saying "fuck you, I'm doing it anyway." So, but yeah, that is very interesting that is the structure of everything. And I mean, look, he's saying a lot of things that I do kind of kind of like get behind in some ways. I mean, he's saying he wants to eliminate extreme weight cutting. I think that in a general sense is a good thing for the sport,
especially with the age of these fighters.
well, absolutely, because of that. But I mean, like, just, it would be nice to not seeing these people having to, go through such extreme hell to make these weights all the time. So, I mean, that's an aspect of it. All of what we talked about a little bit earlier with the revenue split and the, the support and the insurance and things like that. Like, there's a lot of things that are like positives that you can say to this, but it just seems that at the moment we don't have enough information to really, make an educated, assessment of everything yet.
Let me hold on. One thing I do want to question about this sport as well. To what he was saying, I guess I'll continue with him. It's like, I don't know. This is very interesting. Like I asked, like, why even have weight classes? Like, why on your website are you showing all this stuff? I mean, now I understand why you're not showing weights, like specifically in ages and stuff, is because they don't fucking know. They can just be whatever. Like, they're just gonna match. If they're heavyweight, one can be 213 and the other can be 300 pounds. I mean, we're not gonna hold them to any accountability. I mean, come on now, like, But
Well,
I get it. They're old, so.
And I mean, and you're bringing up a good point too, in that, like, so we were saying at the start of this whole thing that, the UFC's major competition is PFL and one. Oh, this GFL might be competition. It would seem that to me, based on this, with the structure that they're laying out here with the weight classes, that really it's not even an actual competitor, because it's not like you could have these guys coming over from elsewhere or coming over from here and being like a major star here and going to the UFC, unless they did just decide to like cut all of that weight and throw away what they were used to in the GFL. But like going from promotion to promotion and making this a really legitimate alternative, like, you're setting yourself in almost a different category altogether by not conforming to the standards of the sport. There's a unified rules for a reason. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, I don't know. There's a lot to question about this. Like, even at first, I was wondering if this was going to be like a sim league for betting. Like, I didn't think this was actually real, because no way these names, like competitive mixed martial arts, and I'm looking at 50-year-old men. Like, I don't know. Until I see it, man. Until I see this draft, it's definitely something we could, and I think this is a good idea, for watch alongs and for the content going forward. We should be a part of witnessing the first GFL draft and event and all that stuff. I think it'll be good moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly not opposed to it. Obviously, we're keeping an eye on it, here. So, I guess, as we kind of said, there's more questions than answers right now, but that's the information that we have at the moment. So, we will keep those eyes peeled and keep you updated as information comes out.
100%.
And we will do all of that on this program here, Last Week's Fights. Of course, as I had mentioned, we are off from the UFC for 2 weeks, but this show will continue. We will be back on Monday talking about something. We'll have to figure out exactly what that's going to be, but something will be on the docket for you. And there will not be any watch-alongs, but hopefully some content will be coming out. Otherwise, actually, Chase and I are going to be looking into getting some guests on the stream. So it might not be Last Week's Fights specifically like you're used to with us breaking down fights, but hopefully we'll have some interesting conversations coming up with some other people in the creation space and elsewhere between the two of us. So either which way, there is a new video out on my channel right now about the call out, or the face-off between Bilal Muhammad and Shavkat Rakhmonov from 310. Go and check that out if you have not seen it. And Chase, I know that you can tell them where they can find you and your content.
They can always find me on youtube.com/@CPSmalls. It will never change. It'll always be that. And then on Twitter, if you ever catch me talking some nonsense, it'll probably be @CreativePartin, PARTIN.
Absolutely. Make sure you follow my boy. And if you are interested, Chase is currently wearing the Yama shirt that he has made, a kind of an interesting little design based on the channel and some of the channel thumbnails. We got a whole little slew of merch that Chase has undertaken making by hand. This man is an entrepreneur over here, getting the merch game going even before we have printing in place. So this dude is doing it on his own. So hit up Chase if you are interested in any last week's fights merchandise. We got some available for you, and he will be happy to make that happen. And we look forward to continuing what we're doing here. So have a great rest of your week. We'll come back and talk to you again next Monday. And as always, everybody, fight on.
Game.